Good morning, everyone. Here with the Board of Pharmacy public meeting. We'll start off by taking a roll call. Albert, you want to start?
Albert Wong, professional member.
Stan Weiser, professional member.
Victor Law, professional member.
Debbie Deal, professional member.
Amy Gutierrez, professional member.
Ricardo Sanchez, public member.
Alan Shad, professional member.
All right, moving on. Public comments for items not on the agenda. Do we have any public comments? Anyone would like to come up and provide the board with public comments? Or agenda items for future meetings?
I'm not sure if it's a good agenda item for a board meeting or org development. Sunday, as usual, at the very last moment, I was working on my trip here, and I noticed that my air reservations were reservations where I hoped I could change the time, and so I attempted to change the flight I had and wasn't able to do so. Giving credit where credit is due, one of your staff, I had emailed the staff figuring, well, they'd pick it up on Monday, and maybe one of your staff was available Sunday night and took care
They're
of
amazing.
making the change
Yes.
Sunday night.
Noticed
And
it wasn't me.
it was Debbie, and I want to publicly thank you and for your availability and for accommodating me. But I wonder if we have changed the policy about air flight, and if we have, is it something that should be discussed, at least in org development, to make sure it doesn't add a element of inconvenience. That I understand being thrifty, but the inconvenience might offset some of the savings.
No, and we have discussed it at org development, and part of it is that when we book some of these flights that are flexible, the flights sometimes are $400 to $500 round trip from Orange County, which is a very big, it's a really high fee. So given that the board meetings are so far out in advance, we've asked the staff to be cognizant of public money and making sure that we try to take the advantage of that. So they are being really good about that and making sure that that is in place. I mean, I myself had the same situation. I wanted to fly out of another airport. They told me, oh, it's going to cost $150 more. I go, no worries, I'll go back to the airport. So I think we just have to be cognizant and balance that with the use of public funds.
And I understand that, but often at the end of the day, when a meeting is either running longer or shorter, and which happens, I think, maybe not frequently, but not rarely, that we look to the opportunity to change our reservations. Again, I don't want to minimize the savings aspect, but I do want to remind everybody that it might cause an inconvenience that will offset some of that.
Well, I think when we have meetings here, they're here, and they usually do a really good job about modifying the schedule if the flight's available. So we do, but I think, Debbie, we talked about it in org development as well and thought we would find a way to try, especially since we don't, changes, at least ahead of time, aren't that much. Let's try to save some money.
I was going to make a comment, but you're looking, do we need to
I
canvass?
think that the issue is that we're in a public comment or items to be placed on a future agenda, so I think it
Oh,
sounds
you
like.
want to put, okay, got it.
May I close the discussion with just saying this is something we're gonna track and watch for a while and see
Okay,
what the
good.
impact is.
Yeah.
That was
Thank you.
part of the change, that's what we're gonna do.
Thank you, Laura and Jenny, for putting us back on track.
Give Laura the credit.
Can I suggest that we have a meeting on put on the agenda on the topic of I kind of noticed it that a lot of diversion cases in our pharmacies. When something happen like this, I think some of the case may not be reported to the police for prosecution. So I would like to have a discussion on it. Maybe we could have regulation that mandated the pharmacy to report to the police. I mean, sometimes we just discipline here and they get away with it without any penalty. So I'd like to have a discussion on that subject.
Any other public comment? Now we'll move on to item 3. Oh wait, we have one, I'm sorry.
I thought the cases were investigated both criminally and administratively.
We don't. She's busy. We don't do criminal investigations. We refer to agencies that have criminal ability. We don't have the ability to prosecute criminally.
Yeah, so if it's discover something, it would be referred to the district attorney's office or the agency that would regulate whatever crime they come across, right?
Well, as a matter of policy, what we do is when someone is going to be fired or has a problem with substance abuse and they're being terminated, we require, in the case of being terminated, they have to report to us. But we also ask that they be arrested at the time so that we get a report up front and so that we have an opportunity then to potentially remove them from practice in a way that our discipline does not allow. We have to go into a criminal court to do it, but we have processes where we can do that if they do what Albert indicates.
Yeah, I was gonna say, I think it does address what you're asking.
Well, we wanna make them pay for the crime. I mean, otherwise we keep encouraging them to do the, just step ahead and they move on, and then the next guy come along, do the same thing, and this process repeat over and over again. You have to send out a message that crime does not pay.
So again, we're back to putting it on the agenda for a future meeting.
Right.
So it sounds like the board is interested in having that on a future agenda.
Okay,
Is that correct?
thanks, Albert. All right, any other public comment? Otherwise, we'll move on to item 3, discussion and consideration of the proposed regulation to amend Title 16 CCR, Section 1760 related to disciplinary guidelines. And Anne, you're our expert on this. The disciplinary guidelines?
Yeah, so I'm just happy to,
And there's a long history with this, and we've been back and forth. What's our latest on the status?
So no comments were received during the comment period, so staff will be compiling the documents and working with OAL to address the concerns from the disapproval.
Any action needed by the board?
No.
No, we don't have to approve the changes?
No, because you did that at the last board
Okay,
meeting.
good, okay.
Yeah, you
Just
gave
an update.
authority, assuming no negative
Perfect.
comments.
All right, cool. That was easy enough.
Okay, moving on to item 4, which is legislation impacting the practice of pharmacy at the board's jurisdiction, and that's the PBM bill, AB 315.
And, Ms. President, I'm gonna recuse myself, so I'll be leaving
Okay,
at the advice of council.
thank you. Thanks, Debbie. We'll call you when you're ready to go back
I'll be asleep on that
in.
You might want to rethink that, but whatever.
So this year, there have been a number of bills that have been introduced in the California legislature to address the increasing cost of prescription medication. There was a recent assembly hearing on drug costs. I have, in fact, testified on behalf of LA County at that hearing as well. And the whole concern is, why are drug costs going up? At the May board meeting, the board will have the opportunity and discuss and take positions on many of the varied proposals that are out there after the Leg Reg Committee has a chance to review them. At this meeting, the board is being requested to consider a proposal that has been introduced to regulate pharmacy benefit managers, or PBMs. Assemblymember Wood, chair of the Assembly Health Committee, is the author of the bill. As introduced, the bill would place the regulation of PBMs under the Board of Pharmacy. Attachment 1 contains a background paper that was prepared for a recent informal legislative hearing on PBMs, and it provides an overview of how PBMs operate. As the bill moves through the legislature, there's going to be various amendments that will likely occur, so it's just in its infancy. At this meeting, we'll have the opportunity to indicate our interest in becoming an active part of the discussion on whether the Board of Pharmacy should be regulating PBMs. Should California decide to regulate PBMs, and should the legislature enact that the board be the regulator of these companies, the board's consumer protection mandate, coupled with the board's requirements to do business under parameters of the Open Meetings Act, will shape the type of regulation that California will use. So I'm going to open it up to discussion on the board members on what is your position. First of all, is this something that you believe that the board should be involved in terms of regulating pharmacy benefit management? Alex, Albert, you want to speak up?
Well, I think the PBM affect our pharmacy profession quite a bit, and I don't see they play fair. So I think we should get involved because it's, I think the way we be going, the pharmacy not gonna become any profession anymore. I mean, we becoming a robot machine. So they control us too much. So we should have a discussion on that.
Stan?
I have a variety of feelings about all of this, and I think that if we can impact the PBMs, it would be to the benefit of the consumers of California. I see some of this as even being restraint of access. I'm not sure if it's restraint of trade, and I'm not an attorney, but I see the contracting methods used by the PBMs as being a restraint of access to many communities where there isn't a chain, whether it be CVS or anybody else, but where there isn't a chain and there's just smaller pharmacies, community pharmacies that are held and owned by proprietors, that getting a contract sometimes from the PBMs for particular plans is not easy, and sometimes there's an exclusion of the smaller pharmacies for whatever reason that the PBM feels that's necessary, and I look at it as a restraint of access.
Do you think there's an impact on the independent
Absolutely.
pharmacies, and then that also impacts consumer access?
Aside from any economic issue, there's an impact on the availability because of the restraint on access.
Victor?
I'd
Oh,
like to add.
sorry.
Can I add one more? I'm not sure you remember. I think last year that I was talking about a reimbursement. I mean that they get to the point that when you fill a prescription, you lose money. I mean, just like you going to work. When you go to work, you pay your boss. I mean, with this kind of system going, the pharmacy cannot survive. And nowadays, when you fill a prescription, you don't know what the reimbursement is. I mean, we don't care, how much they pay, but at least they tell you what it is. But they do not tell you what it is. They just give you a figure. They could deduct it later. They could add more later. So you really don't know what when you fill a prescription, you don't know what you're getting. That's the problem. So I think we have to at least be fair, so the profession could survive.
Victor, do you have any thoughts?
For many years, I think the consumers and the patients, they have really been hurt by these PBMs. Not only because of the access, also they're being mandated into mail order, they're mandated to go to specific places. So this is a big step forward. I really believe if we could do it, that would be in the best interest of the consumers.
Cheryl?
I pretty much agree with everyone, basically that exactly what you've said, because I see the potential for conflict with PBMs and the fact that they also operate in their own mail order pharmacies and retail pharmacies, so I do think we should have something to say about it.
Ricardo, any thoughts?
Yeah.
Alan?
Well, I agree with everybody that something should be done about the PBMs. And, and in this little impact paper that was printed up for the legislature, one of the things that particularly struck me was that for the pharmacists as such and the effect on the public, it says here, in certain circumstances, a customer may be charged a flat copay, say $20, for the cost of a drug that is less than that, say $10. If the customer just came in and got the drug, it would be $10. But because they're getting it on their insurance, it's going to be $20. Normally, a pharmacist, I would hope, would tell the patient it's better if you get it off the insurance. But they may not be able to tell a consumer because they may be prohibited by the terms of the PBM contract. There's a degree of disingenuousness. That's so unfair. However, when we say about controlling it, we've got to have a degree of practicality about it. Okay, I personally
Well, I did not know anybody read the article that Jenny sent it to us. That was one article when it told the whole thing about the PBM. You sent it to us about how they get the rebate. Basically, the PBM not work. I mean, they got the right to make their fair share of the profit, but I think they get a little greedy. They get it from the drug company, from the rebate, from the people who they insure, and they got even from the consumer. So, and even get it from the pharmacy also. So they get a piece of action from everybody, but for their own pocket, but not for the best interest of the consumer.
And just in my opinion, when I looked at this, I mean, in some ways I agree with what Alan's saying. I do believe there needs to be, and I'm looking at it from a patient focus. I mean, I've got an elderly mother, and I've got to deal with issues with her, and a lot of times I've got issues with accessing medication. The prior authorization's taking forever.
They dictate the formulary.
Yeah, and you can't. I mean, sometimes I just say I'm just going to pay for it, just because it's not. But maybe some patients don't have that ability to be able to pay for it. So it's a little bit, there is a patient-consumer, patient access feature to it. There's some physicians I know that are now saying they're going to start charging patients to do prior authorizations because it's taking too much of their time, and they're having to go back and forth and battle with the PBM to be able to
But
try to
they
get
put on the
access.
formula based on what kind of rebate, which one to give rebate. It's not what the best for the patient. That's the problem.
But do we believe, and I guess I'll turn it over to Jenny, what do you think? Or do we believe we've got the resources and the staff? Will we be given staffing? How does this work?
Well, we would need staffing in order to pick up. I see the bill as two parts, and let's start at the beginning. The real focus of this bill, from our perspective, and the reason they're even talking about us, I truly do believe, is our consumer protection mandate, and the fact that everything we do has to be done publicly. In the Department of Insurance, they're not bound by the same kind of constraints that we are. They can have meetings behind closed doors, whereas our public policy making is out in the public, which is kind of the transparency. I think that part of the regulators, or at least the people that are frustrated, are looking. Probably the single greatest thing that's affecting the public right now with respect to the access to medication is the cost of it and whether or not we can afford. Wow.
Sorry, go
Who's up
ahead.
here?
Perhaps I should just be quiet.
No, go ahead.
But nonetheless, I think that the consumer concerns of whether or not they're getting the best deal, why they shouldn't, as Dr. Shad just indicated, why they shouldn't be told in a pharmacy that there's a cheaper way to get this drug is part of what we should do. So at the very least, the board should be involved some way in a consumer bill of rights. So that here are your rights, and develop those publicly with the assistance of the public and as well as industry. But we need to have that out there. And then with respect to your question about resources, if we had the resources to do this now, we would be overstaffed and over-allocated in an area that we're not even regulating, and so it would be inefficient. So we would have to hire staff or contract for specific types of skill sets that we don't have. But the economists are out there, those people are out there, and I would say perhaps the Department of Insurance or the Department of Managed Healthcare may have to hire additional staff to look at the program and manage PBMs in the manner in which at least Mr.
So you're saying if the board is given authority to oversee this, there will be commensurate staff
there would be
that will be allocated
we
with
would have to develop
skills?
the staff, absolutely, because we do not have the staff to do that part of it. I think we do for the consumer side of it, because right now we're investigating complaints involving PBMs, and we've just seen a couple of them. We became heightened sensitivity in the last couple of months as this bill came forward. But and those I know, before Laura jumps up and says you can't discuss them, I know I cannot discuss those. But we've seen situations where
She
a
has us
regulator
trained well. Laura, you know, that was just saying you're doing your job. The fact that we can recite it without you having to say anything. You've trained us well.
Well, in the area of regulation of consumer protection with respect to pharmacy, I can't think of a bigger issue that's out there right now that's unregulated than this one. And either we rise to the occasion or we recede back into the background and become basically a impotent, frankly, regulator. So either we get in there, and we don't have the statutory mandate to get in there now, we can only get on the peripheries.
Well, let's hear council's comments.
Yeah, he's gonna Ginny,
He's
quiet.
been patient.
Ginny, be quiet.
No, not at all. It's I just wanted to respond to Alan's comment, only in the sense that I wholeheartedly agree that there's going to be many areas of this that are outside of the current expertise of board staff and board and prosecutors and so forth. But as long as I've been working with the board, which has been since 2003, the idea of someone regulating PBMs has been bandied about between various agencies and the legislature, and no one has ever really stepped up to do it. And there are certain parts of the mission of PBMs that are right in the wheelhouse of the Board of Pharmacy, and some parts of it that would have to involve the Board of Pharmacy, because the interactions between consumers and pharmacies and PBMs would have to be something that the Board of Pharmacy would have to be involved in anyway. And the other agencies that might involve it, might regulate it, DOI or Department of Managed Healthcare or so forth, they would deal mostly with the entity relationships. They wouldn't deal with the consumer relationship. So I think it's going to have to be an area in which the board, there's lots of areas in which the board is having to acquire additional expertise. I mean, 5 years ago, the board was never intending to, regulate out-of-state sterile compounding pharmacies or, things like that. So there's acquire greater expertise about, and it's a whole new world in terms of pharmacy regulation.
Gosh. So I'm still finding an occasional wound from past battles, and the one that this brings to mind is the e-pedigree battle, where we made a huge effort and were successful in developing legislation and regs to secure the supply chain, an area where I felt we belonged, rightfully so. And then, of course, the lobbyists and the representatives of the large pharmaceutical companies went to the federal government and got something different than what we had. It was put in place, and it took us out of the equation. Is that a concern that we should have, that we would go through a huge amount of effort and work and then find that the feds, if you'll excuse the expression, will trump us?
Well, I mean,
Would that be a bad thing?
yeah, depending on your point of view. I mean, I hope you share the view that many people do, that without California's moving forward on the pedigree law, there never would have been a federal law. and that the federal law is a net positive, even if it doesn't necessarily have every single aspect that the California law might have had. I mean, that was sort of the general consensus view. Yeah. So I think that it's possible that the Board of Pharmacy being an active regulator in this area would result in other people saying, hey, that's our turf and back off and we're going to regulate this area. But I still think that would also be a net positive.
And I see that actually, Stan, the fact that we get trumped as a good thing, because it shows that kind of what we did with the whole e-pedigree. We called attention to the federal government on an issue, and eventually it became a federal mandate. So I think it speaks very well of California and the board to have that, because it's greater expansion across the whole
But
country.
getting back to the wounds I was referring to, the federal regulations are a far cry from what what we had put in place.
They are essentially delayed from what we had put in place.
Okay.
Because all along, we were both trying to go down the same road, so we didn't have industry having to do this. But with that said, there's only so much you can do in tracking and tracing anyway, and the technology was coming through. The beef was whether or not California had the authority to do this. So, but I
It's just
think
a
we
point.
influenced.
Where would we
influence.
be? Where would we be now? I mean, if we hadn't done this, we could have probably be in the same
Exactly.
situation, right?
I
I
agree.
think Mr.
It's just that I'm less than overjoyed with what the outcome is with the Fed.
But it's actually a very good analogy, because the whole reason that California took action on the pedigree law was that it had waited 15 years or so for the feds to do something, and we're still waiting. And similarly here, as I said, in the 14 years that I've been working with the board, all that time there's been talk of regulating PBMs, and it hasn't happened. So somebody needs to be the one to throw the first pitch.
I'm not intimidated by it, and I know you weren't.
I know you'd never be intimidated. No, I'm intimidated. I'm intimidated. I know you're not.
I want to sit next to Alan at our next meeting.
Though, you know what's kind of interesting is only 3 states so far have PBMs regulated or licensed, I guess it is. And 2 states, it's with the Department of Insurance. 1 state, Georgia, it's with the Board of Pharmacy. And if I'm not mistaken, those PBMs are licensed as a PBM pharmacy. And so,
And you don't hear those kind of abuses that we had in California, don't you?
beg your pardon?
You never heard that kind of abuses in those states that's been regulated. Is that true?
No, I don't know that.
I think it's
I think it's going on. I think it's a sham. I think we're the only ones that can.
Everything always starts here in the States, so we're.
Yeah, the bellwether state. Remember that? Yeah. Okay.
I do want to state that we did receive a letter from CVS Health that I'm circulating. We only got 2 copies, so I'll circulate a copy one way and this way. Well, basically what they are stating is that they believe that AB 315 creates a potential for conflicts of interest to arise as board members exercise regulatory authority while at the same time working with PBMs on a daily basis. They are requesting, and you can read the whole letter, but it basically is requesting the board not support AB 315 regarding the regulation of PBMs. So I'll send that out.
Oh, so they don't think they should be regulated?
Wow, that means me and
So it-
Albert
it's just-
have to be careful. If we vote anything on them, our contract may be terminated.
That's right.
Next month.
I'm
If
sure
you hear anything
never
like that
happened.
next month.
Stan, you have a
Is
question?
this the only copy of the letter?
There's 2
we have
copies.
2 copies. One
Okay.
went that way, one
Maybe
went that way.
we could get a copy for each member of the board. I don't know if this came from.
It's going to be a little hard for us to do it over here. We'll send you one after.
Okay, cool.
So we'll open it up for public comment, and I do want to, because I anticipate there'll be a lot of comments coming in, we're going to leave it to 5 minutes. So if you want to come up for public comment on the board's support of AB 351.
Hey, Amy, before you do that, can I just make one quick announcement?
Yes.
If you are here for a petition hearing, can you come out in the hall to meet with me and with the ALJ so that we can just have a free talk about that? If you're one of the people who's here.
Thanks, Josh.
Thank you.
Good morning, Ramon.
Good morning, Ramon Casablanc. I'm writing on this subject for the University of California Institute for Research in Labor and Employment. I also presented at the First Wood hearing on prescription drugs. So there's a reason that the PBM industry has been able to put off regulations for 10 years. It's not a secret what they've been doing, but it's a very big and powerful industry, and which is not to say you shouldn't take it on, but just so you know who you're getting involved with. Optum, Caremark, Express Scripts. The profits of the two of those have increased tenfold in the last 10 years. And they are making a lot of money. They've lost a number of lawsuits. They've been, in the case of CalPERS, found to be involved in scandals, basically, bribing board members here, and they persist in their relationship to health plans across the United States. The big issues, it certainly is a major issue how it affects the quality of care in the pharmacy and the gag orders and all those kinds of things. But what lays underneath this are the rebates that the industry is getting and not sharing with the health plans that pay them to get the rebates. The spreads, they tell their clients that they pay $1 for a drug, and actually they pay 80 cents and they pocket the 20 cents. And then they have contracts designed in such a way that the client doesn't know that the pharmacy only got 80 cents. And so if you wade into this, and I'm not in any way suggesting you don't, but you would need a lot of expertise around the contracting, because that's where a lot of this is going on, is the contracts conceal the rebates, they rename them, they relabel them, they get a rebate for a drug and then they call it an administrative fee or something like that. And so, you would really need some sharp lawyers. You would need, not that you don't have them, of course, but, they might have to bone up in some of this stuff around the way that they hide rebates, the way that they hide spreads, because ultimately that's where it's going. And so this piece of legislation is just sort of like the camel's nose in the tent. I mean, saying we're going to license them would only be the front end of this whole thing. And then were some state to do that alongside the other couple of states, the next item on the agenda is going to be to start digging in to what's going on with rebate spreads and things like that. So I just want to, from my perspective, give you a heads up as to where you might be going, and wish you good luck.
Thanks, Ramon. Ramon, we miss you on the board.
All right. I'd like to bring to the board's attention that Ramon was actually here early for this meeting.
Oh, wow.
Yeah.
Impressive. Good morning.
Good morning. Good morning. John Roth, CEO for the California Pharmacists Association, and our representative, Jim Gross. Just want to make a few comments, President Gutierrez, on AB 315. For full disclosure, CPHA is in support of the legislation by Dr. Wood. And I appreciate, the fact that there is a lot of complexity in the relationships that PBMs have with consumers, with the pharmacies, with the entire supply chain. But I think that is, in fact, the point of why we think it's important that the Board of Pharmacy be the regulator. In any market, when a few companies, control a majority of that market, as is in the case with PBMs, where the three largest control 78%, or 180 million lives across the country. We think it's important that there's some regulatory oversight into those activities. And as it relates to the problems that our members bring to myself, and just to be clear, they bring those problems on behalf of the consumers that are in their pharmacies. Consumers that have received letters from PBMs, doing something to them to where they're not able to get their medication or maintain the relationship with their pharmacist at the community level. We think that is smack in the wheelhouse of what the Board of Pharmacy does, is consumer protection. Because the statutory mandate is consumer protection, and because the Board of Pharmacy is involved in every other aspect of the pharmacy delivery or pharmaceutical benefit delivery system, we think that it is the appropriate regulatory body. When you think of it, and to Dr. Shad's question, the board already oversees organizations such as wholesalers, third-party logistics companies, pharmacists, pharmacies, out-of-state pharmacies, and other companies that do business in the state, all under the requirement that it look through the consumer protection lens. And arguably, let's take wholesalers, for example. They're very complex, large, financially intertwined organizations. And that's not the board's mission, but it is your mission to determine how wholesalers and those other regulated bodies are impacted to the consumer. And so I think this would be a very similar construct where, yes, there's a lot of items and relationships and negotiations and financial intertwinings of PBMs. But at the end of the day, we think the bottom line is that the board would still have its mandate to see how those PBM relationships, contracts and whatnot are in detriment or are going against the consumer having access to their medications. So we do support Dr. Wood's efforts to place a regulatory framework on PBMs, and we do think the Board of Pharmacy is the right agency to do so.
Jim Gross on behalf of the California Pharmacists Association. And while I'm not here to represent Dr. Wood, I do want to reflect some of the conversations that we have had with him about this issue. First and foremost, I think Dr. Wood's concern is, one, the impact on the cost of healthcare generally, and two, the impact on the consumer. And I think his focus is not only on the pharmacy side, of course, but on the types of arrangements that Dr. Costelmach referred to, the rebate arrangements and various other transactional issues that we know very little about and that really go hand in hand with some of the other inquiries that are being made with respect to what's driving drug prices. I think he feels that this bill at this stage begins a process for knowing more about that and determining how best to get that information to those who are payers, consumers, policymakers, et cetera. So I don't think he's rendering any judgments about right or wrong at this point. I think what he is doing is trying to move forward legislation that will give us all a much better picture. I think the regulatory construct will take shape further, and I think that will also generate more discussion as to the proper regulatory approach, not only which body, but how that body approaches it, whether there are elements that belong in different agencies, which some have suggested. So I think it is still very much a dialogue in that regard, but one thing I think he does believe very strongly is that state agencies do have an appropriate role, and he wants to determine how best to construct that role. Thank you.
Thank you. Is there currently a location or somewhere where a patient can file a complaint if they are not being treated appropriately from a PBM?
Yes and no. If it involves the pharmacy side, we have some control. We have some control if it gets to excessive price charging, which is not really what the PBMs are charged with. So that
How about access? I mean, just an access issue. I can't get my medication because I can't.
If I can on that.
If there is a defined time that they commit to responding within a certain period of time and they leave the patient without medication or recourse during that period, we can attempt to mediate it, but there's a limit to how far we can go because you need a law to be able to plead against it.
To add to Ms. Harold's comments, and I think that the PBMs will also explain this if they discuss this today, you've got the Department of Insurance that regulates PPOs, basically. You've got the Department of Managed Healthcare that regulates HMOs, and then you have ERISA plans that are not within that construct. All three of those retain PBMs. But in every instance, they are, in essence, agents, either for the ERISA plan or for the health insurer or for the HMO. So the Department of Managed Healthcare has a responsibility to deal with complaints about pharmacy benefits, but they deal with the plan. They don't deal with the PBM. Similarly with the Department of Insurance, and then there is no oversight at all on the ERISA side. So PBMs are agents in all of those instances, but are not directly regulated, and those agencies currently have no ability to take action against them. They can only deal with the plan that they license and regulate.
Thank you. Good morning.
Good morning. Madam President, board members, Ms. Harold, I'm Richard Mazzoni, representing the Pharmaceutical Care Management Association, the trade association for the PBM industry. I'm a licensed pharmacist here in California and a former member and president of this board, as Ms. Harold I'm sure will remember. I'm also the current chairman of the New Mexico Board of Pharmacy. Brings back bad memories, Ginny, I know. While PCMA has a number of objections to this bill, I'm only going to address one aspect today, and that this board is not the appropriate regulator for PBMs. As you know, the North Carolina Dental Board decision, the Supreme Court sided with the FTC when it held that state licensing boards are not subject to immunity from antitrust litigation if those boards are controlled by what they refer to as active market participants, which is all the professional members on this board, and are creating regulations that limit competition. Most recently, the acting chair of the FTC announced that the creation of the Economic Liberty Task Force, which will identify problematic licensing laws, and is specifically set out to do that. Although this task force is mostly meant to be an advisory resource, they've made it clear that they're going to take legal action against licensing boards engaged in anti-competitive behavior. Also, the FTC already had a problem with Board of Pharmacy regulation of PBMs in the state of Mississippi, and I'll quote this one. Because pharmacists and PBMs have a competitive and at times adversarial relationship, we are concerned that giving the Pharmacy Board regulatory power over PBMs may create tensions and conflicts of interest for the Pharmacy Board. Indeed, the antitrust laws recognize that there is a real danger that regulatory boards composed of market participants may pursue their own interests rather than those of the state. The FTC has made it clear that the regulatory scheme that you're proposing could be anti-competitive. And at the same time, they are increasing scrutiny of boards like this, and you could end up in a situation where this board, although you're acting in the best interest of the consumer, promulgates a regulation that is seen by the FTC as favoring pharmacists at the expense of PBMs. The result could be that this board, and this is important, the individual pharmacists could lose their immunity for antitrust litigation. And I'm not an attorney, and I'll defer to your counsel, but that is the way I've read it and the way I've been told in my state. Because of the scrutiny by the FTC, not only your legal team, but a separate independent third-party entity with the authority to overturn or modify any rules that you make would have to meet the active supervision requirement outlined in the Supreme Court decision. You could be precluded from making policy that you could feel was right, but a third-party entity in the state would have the ability to overturn. I'm not going to go into the fact that a lot of what the PBMs do are already regulated by the Department of Insurance and the Department of Managed Healthcare. That was already well articulated. The consumers do have recourse, obviously through the plans, not directly with the PBMs. And I have a list of the various statutes and regs that apply, and I'd be happy to provide it if anybody would like to have it. But given the broad range of existing laws and regulations that apply to PBMs and the concerns with PBMs that the board has expressed, it appears possible or likely that the board could delve into the same issues, creating contradictory regulations or applications of regulations through enforcement. More likely it will be different interpretations, but the end result could be a regulatory nightmare. The concern that we have is that the board may promulgate regulations or reach decisions that says a PBM's practices are unacceptable, even though those same practices are acceptable to DMHC or DOI. The plans, the insurers, and perhaps the patients could be caught in the middle of this. For this reason, PCMA would respectfully request the board take a neutral or opposed position to AB 315. And I thank you very much for allowing me to speak today.
Rich?
Yes, sir.
You came to the table and you introduced yourself as a representative of the
PCMA.
and you said that you're also the president of the board.
I'm chair of the board in New Mexico, yes, sir.
So are you here representing both entities?
No, that was merely as a point of introduction. And if you want to know anecdotally, if you want me to put on my Board of Pharmacy hat from New Mexico, if that's what you're asking.
I was just curious about who you represent.
I represent, clearly I'm here on behalf of PCMA. Thank you.
Thank you. Any other public comment on this issue? Good morning.
Hello. If the board would like me to respond to some of those North Carolina issues, I can do that at a very sort of high level.
Yeah, we were gonna ask, I was gonna ask for you to do that, Laura, when we're done with the public comment. Thank you.
Hello, my name is Maral Farsi. I am here on behalf of CVS Health. We operate obviously as a pharmacy and a pharmacy benefit manager all over the country. I won't belabor the points that were made by Mr. Mazzoni, who expressed the same concerns that we have about the potential for antitrust issues that could arise with the Board of Pharmacy regulating PBMs. I'm not going to discuss the merits of whether PBMs are going to be need to be regulated. I'm concerned about this entity being the regulator. And I think thinking about it globally, PBMs, there's not a single PBM in the state of California that has a contractual relationship with consumers. Our relationships are with our clients, who are the employers, the health plans, the unions in the state that require PBM services. And what we do for them, you all probably well know, is we aggregate lives and we help bring down the price of drugs on behalf of those payers, the ones that are paying for the cost of coverage. Our clients are regulated, as the pharmacist said, by the Department of Insurance and the Department of Managed Healthcare. Both of those entities, you can go on either one of their websites, have very clear, obvious links where consumers can file complaints. They can escalate those complaints, but really the PBM is acting on behalf of those clients, and those clients are well regulated by the state of California. I think you also heard a lot about the complexity of our relationships with manufacturers. We obviously have relationships with pharmacists, but this board's mission is to promote the health and safety of Californians by examining quality pharmacy care and the appropriate use of pharmaceuticals. And it's not to monitor or regulate the relationship that health plans have, contractual relationships that health plans and payers have with pharmacy benefit managers. The consumer protections in that fall under the DMHC and DOI. Chair Gutierrez, I think what you had mentioned about prior authorization issues, I wanted to address that because I've heard you speak about that before. I don't know exactly why a doctor would want to start charging for this other than saying that this process has gotten much more complicated, but just to point out something that could be a potential factor. 2 years ago, there was a law passed in California that required that the prior authorization process be extremely simplified. It has to be on a front and back piece of paper, which has required sometimes more information from doctors. This was the consumer or maybe even physician interest in the state of California to have a simpler process that in many cases has resulted in delays of care. So there are other ancillary issues that have added complexity to what the consumer relationship is with their drugs that I just wanted to also address since you brought it up. Also, Dr. Shad, you had mentioned that there are 3 states that regulate PBMs. There's actually quite a number more. I think there's just
those states do have laws that require auditing parameters. What is that? Clear audit, or there's some term.
Audit laws.
Isn't that
yeah.
22, 23 states that have that? And California is one of them.
That's correct, right.
Yes.
And in the states where we're formally regulated by an agency, it's always either under the Department of Insurance or some sort of business licensing entity, with one exception, Mississippi. Mississippi law was passed, I think, don't quote me, but it was probably about 3 or 4 years, 5 years ago, and they issued some regulations, and immediately they backtracked on what those regulations were because of these concerns that potentially the members of the board could be seen as doing something that could violate some antitrust rules. So at any rate, I wanted to...
Can I ask you for those other states?
Yes.
The question I asked before, where can a consumer go to file a complaint?
Mm-hmm.
I mean, right now, the consumers can go to the Board of Pharmacy. Sometimes they don't know that it's due to the pharmacy. It could be the wholesaler. It could be a lot of other factors.
Mm-hmm.
And typically the board investigates. In these other states, where do they go to file a complaint where they can get an answer?
Well,
if it's a PBM issue.
Right, so those states that are regulating PBMs, I don't want to say 100% of the time because I'm not sure, but most of them are regulating the relationship between PBMs and pharmacies, not the consumer relationship. It would be the same as here in California where the consumers would have to go to DMHC and DOI. That's where we would go. That's where consumers in the state of California should go if they have a problem with their coverage. If they have a problem with the pharmacy, then that complaint would be lodged with the Board of Pharmacy.
What if they had a problem with some of the PBM practices and policies? Where would they go?
So, but the PBM works on behalf of the client, works on behalf of the entity that's regulated by the DMHC and DOI, right? We don't have a direct relationship with the consumers other than what the client tells us to do for them, right? So if a patient doesn't like a drug that they're being provided, that's a client issue. That's what the health plan has decided to offer them or change or what have you. Am I making sense?
You know that your statement twice you've said you don't have a direct relationship with the consumer. You don't have a contractual relationship with patients. I think that's where we're talking about is there's no relationship, so there's no venue for true complaints.
But neither do the wholesalers. They don't have a contractual relationship, and we're regulating them.
Oh,
But that goes
to
It's the consumer, right? I mean, there's other entities.
There's a degree of facetiousness in my comment.
Yeah, I know. Okay. I mean, sterile compounding outsourcers also don't have a relationship. I mean, I'm just making that, and I agree with you. So, yeah, I think we're on the same page.
And let me ask a question. So is it your belief personally and the belief of the organization that you represent that this board is not a consumer protection board agency? I mean, because you stated that in the beginning of your presentation.
I don't believe I said that this isn't a consumer protection board, but I think that the mission of the Board of Pharmacy is very clear as to those consumer protections are for the care of pharmacy and for pharmaceutical products, which is where the wholesaler issue comes in. That's why you guys regulate wholesalers.
So the question is, do you personally, or the organization that you represent, believe that this is a consumer protection board/agency?
Well, of course it is, but there are so many of those entities in the state of California.
I'm just curious to know what
And
your
I'm only
position
speaking on behalf of my client. I can't speak for myself, obviously, but what I'm saying
was. So who
is
are you speaking
that
on
the
behalf of?
CVS Caremark, CVS Health.
But you just said, so, I mean, I don't want to, this is not an adversary relationship between you and I, but I was surprised to hear you start your presentation with what I thought I heard, that we're not viewed as a consumer protection agency, that there are other agencies here in the state government that deals with consumer protection, and that's not one of our rules. I thought that's what you
Oh, I'm
said.
sorry. I did not mean to imply that is not your role. That is absolutely your role.
Okay, good.
Absolutely. I mean, obviously you're under the Department of Consumer Affairs, but my point is that there are other entities that are already acting in or should be acting, I mean, in this role on behalf of the consumers of the state of
But certainly
California.
that wouldn't preclude us from acting as a consumer protection agency.
Of course not, but you already do.
Right.
Of course.
Okay.
Okay. I think your time is up. We're past the 5 minutes. Is that right, Ann? Okay, we'll move on to the next public comment. Good morning.
Good morning, Madam Chair and board members, staff. Dennis McAllister. I'm here on my day job with Express Scripts, but I'm speaking mostly from my decades of experience in pharmacy regulation. There is no argument that there are problems in the delivery of pharmaceutical products to patients with intermediaries and businesses creating rules and such. The Board of Pharmacy is tasked with regulating the practice of pharmacy, the distribution of drugs, wholesalers, and so on, and licensing of individuals. The issues that were brought up earlier by Mr. Kesselbach are fact, but this is not the venue to take care of them. There is clear issues of controlling business that have been repeatedly discussed at NEBP and around district meetings and so on. The boards of pharmacy, and I am one, I've been on a board for a long time, are not involved with the business of pharmacy. It's the practice of pharmacy and protecting patients. So it's my opinion, and my company's opinion, that while this needs to be worked on, the Board of Pharmacy is not the right venue.
Now, is your company, is it a PBM?
It's two parts, PBM and mail service. They are separate.
PBM wouldn't want to be regulated. I mean, if I had a company that wasn't regulated, I sure wouldn't be in favor of regulation.
Well, they don't believe that the Board of Pharmacy is the right venue.
They believe regulation is needed,
They
but
believe
not the Board of
there
Pharmacy.
is regulation available. It might need to be tuned up.
Thank you. Any other public comment? Laura, do you want to address the issues about North Carolina and that were raised?
And I think I'm gonna address it just very briefly and not go into a great deal of detail. But the North Carolina decision impacts you now. You regulate a certain area. There are certain market participants on this board, and it affects the decisions that you make when they cross over into that anti-competitive sphere. And I don't think that the concerns that are being raised are going to be any different. Obviously, those concerns would need to be taken into account in any legislation that's drafted, as well as any regulations that drafted. But the protection and the immunity that comes is built in by state action, and it's also built in by really focusing the direction on the consumer protection, because the anti-competitive conduct is the concern that what's motivating the regulator is the relationship. And so by going through a lot of efforts to demonstrate that whatever actions the board takes are motivated by its efforts to protect the consumer and demonstrating those, that would protect the board. So I think it's not that the issue doesn't exist, but the issue already exists, and we're building in practices about how to deal with that and protect it. And one of those ways is obviously having the public members on the board, and also really doing a very thorough job of articulating the pieces in the actions that you do, how you're protecting the consumer. And I think I heard somebody else mention it, but one of the pieces is obviously you're already regulating other entities that, like wholesalers, that the same issues exist for. So I do think that the issues are there. I'm not denying that, but I think they're not insurmountable.
I think it's the realm we operate in that we constantly have to be aware of where we're operating. But for us, the Open Meetings Act really forces all public decision-making here in this room once we get more than two of you together. And the other piece of that is that we have a separate authority that oversees our rulemaking process. So that's an independence that North Carolina also didn't have.
Right. And that's the state supervision that creates that insulation.
Kind of similar to what we've been doing with some of the sterile compounding and the outsourcers, that they're providing care to patients through pharmacies. I mean, the outsourcers don't deal directly with, and we're going to have regulations and we're going to regulate outsourcers. The federal government does as well, but we've got a role in that with the new outsourcer bill that's kind of in a similar situation.
Well, at the end of the day, you've got a product that's reaching the patient, and we're regulating that. And how that product gets to the patient is through the payment systems that are there. And anyway, we've already discussed this.
I would like to remind the board and the audience that when our board, all of our seats are occupied by appointed representatives of our communities, that the board has 6 members who are non-professional members and 7 members who are professional members. And the assumption is that all 7 members are actively involved in the practice of pharmacy that would require them to be engaged one way or another as a recipient of a PBM relationship. And that isn't necessarily so. So I just want to make sure we all have that in the front of our minds, that we have 6 members who are not pharmacists, and we have members of the board who are not necessarily working with PBMs as part of the practice.
Yeah, and in the North Carolina cases, they have the majority of the board members are actually practicing dentists. But here we have a different composition of board members. Even out of the 7 professional members, they're from different settings. And right now, maybe only me and Albert are in the retail setting that might have direct contract with PBMs. The rest of the professional members, they don't have anything to do with PBMs.
But you have to appreciate us being warned of that.
Right.
Oh, yes, we appreciate that.
So what do
That was
we,
facetiousness.
so Jenny, what do we need? We just need to ratify the board's direction to support the bill and give you authority to have staff work with the author to make modifications. Laura?
I think it's up to the board. I mean, obviously, it's what the board would like to do if.
Okay. Does anyone want to make a motion?
So our motion would be in support of the legislation, absolutely.
And have staff work with the author to modify the regulation in keeping with the direction that the board's established.
Modify the bill.
Modify the bill, or make recommendations to modify the bill, yeah.
Okay.
Second. Okay, any public comment before we take a vote? All in favor? Opposed? You're gonna abstain? Abstain, okay. All right. Moving down to petitions for reinstatement of licensure or other reduction of penalty. Yeah, let's take a 5-minute break to set up. Thank you.
Good morning.
Morning.
We are on the record before the Board of Pharmacy today to review 5 petitions for penalty relief. My name is Marilyn Woolard. I'm an administrative law judge with the Office of Administrative Hearings, and I'll be presiding over the matters today. And if I can ask the board members to introduce themselves for the record, beginning with Mr. Wong.
Albert Wong, professional member.
Stan Weiser, professional member.
Victor Law, professional member.
Debbie Veal, professional member.
Amy Gutierrez, professional member.
Lavanza Butler, professional member.
Ricardo Sanchez, public member. Alan Chad, professional member.
All right, and we're going to begin today with the petition filed on behalf of Martin Mendezabal, and that is Office of Administrative Hearings, case 2017-030761. Today is March 30th, 2017. And Ms. Field, did you have something that you wanted to indicate for the record?
Mr. Mendezabal and I both work for CBS, so I will recuse myself.
All right, and we do have a quorum. So, thank you, ma'am. All right, so just as an overview, before this hearing, I had an opportunity to meet with the petitioners, including Mr. Mendezabal, and explain the procedures in this case. I emphasize that the board is concerned with hearing about the petitioner's rehabilitation since the license was disciplined, and explain that the Deputy Attorney General room will first proceed with an orientation of the matter. After that, the petitioner will have the right to make a presentation to the board under oath to explain why he believes his petition should be granted. You may also call witnesses on your behalf, sir, and those witnesses also would be placed under oath. And both you and any other witnesses would be subject to questioning by Mr. Room and by the members of the board. Again, I would like to emphasize that the board is particularly concerned with rehabilitation. The petitioner is reminded that the board has had the benefit of reading your petition package, and it's not necessary to repeat that package in detail. And after the hearing, after all the hearings are concluded today, the board will go into closed session to make a determination about how to proceed on the petition, and your final decision will be received in the mail in the future.
Thank you.
Are there any questions, Mr. Mendezabal, about
No,
how
ma'am.
to proceed? Thank you. Mr. Room, would you care to provide an overview?
Yes, Your Honor. Supervising Deputy Attorney General Joshua Room, appearing on behalf of the people pursuant to Government Code 11522. I have placed before Your Honor a total of 3 documentary exhibits, which I'd like to mark and admit. The first being Mr. Mendez. I'm going to ask you to pronounce your last name because I think we're all saying it wrong.
It's okay, Mendezabal.
Mendezabal. Okay. Mr. Mendezabal's agreement to have electronic recording of this hearing as opposed to a court reporter. I'd ask that that be marked and admitted, Your Honor.
Yes, the document is marked and admitted as Exhibit A.
Thank you, Your Honor. And the next is a voluminous paper exhibit placed before Your Honor. That is Mr. Mendizabel's petition for early termination of probation and related documents. I'll just briefly describe the documents in there, including a cover letter from Mr. Mendizabel's counsel, Adam Brown, the petition for early termination itself, several handwritten pages from Mr. Mendizabel answering the questions, providing additional answers to the questions in the petition, and a handwritten personal statement, criminal case documents showing his completion of probation on his 2012 DUI conviction, 2 pages showing the completion of the board-approved CE of 30 hours, a thank you card from a patient, a thank you letter from a hospital, his documentation of 15 years of service with CVS Health, 3 pages documenting his 12-step meeting attendance in 2016, 8 pages of various customers at CVS's positive comments on Mr. Mendizabel's customer service, 2 pages listing his witnesses, 1 page showing his 3 years received exceeds expectations ratings at CVS from 2014 to 2016, and another health performance rating of exceeds expectations from January 2016. Another follow-up letter from Mr. Brown, his counsel, a thank you letter to petitioner from the city of Bellflower from this year, and certificates demonstrating the completion of those 30 hours of board-approved CE between August 9th and 13th, 2016. Then there are a total of 10 letters of recommendation, 3 from board licensees, 3 pharmacists wrote letters, and 7 private individuals wrote letters. In addition, one of those persons who wrote letters, Mr. Scott Than, provided an additional letter to petitioner that he brought with him today. He does not have copies of it, but it's mostly duplicative of the original letter anyway, but if the board members want to see that letter, it can be passed around for their review.
I will mark that letter separately and pass it around.
Thank you. Mr. Mendizabel also brought with him another documentary exhibit today of a postcard that a patient sent to him.
And I'll follow a similar procedure.
Thank you. So I'd ask that all of the documents I previously described be marked and admitted, Your Honor.
Those will be marked as Exhibit B collectively and admitted. However, I do want to indicate that on the first page of the petition, Mr. Mendizabel has his date of birth and his home address, and those we believe should be redacted.
Okay.
So that as redacted, the petition will be admitted.
Thank you, Your Honor. I apologize for neglecting to redact before admitting it. The third document, Your Honor, are the underlying administrative documents in this case, the decision and accusation in case number 4449. The accusation in case number 4449 was filed against petitioner on March 1st, 2014. It alleged 5 causes for discipline arising out of petitioner's 3 convictions. Convictions in 2012 and 2006 of driving with a blood alcohol level of 0.08% or more, and a 2003 conviction for driving while under the influence. In addition, the accusation alleged disciplinary considerations of 2 more convictions, a 1999 conviction for battery and a 1992 conviction for driving with a blood alcohol level of 0.08% or more. On September 26, 2014, petitioner and his counsel, Adam Brown, agreed to and signed a stipulation agreeing not to contest the accusation and stipulating to a disciplinary order, revoking his technician license and staying revocation in favor of 4 years probation, standard terms including $6,110 in costs, plus terms including abstention, drug testing, 12-step attendance, and a worksite monitor. By decision and order of the board, that stipulation was adopted effective November 7, 2014. Ask that that be marked and admitted, Your Honor.
Marked and admitted as Exhibit C. I'm also marking as Exhibit D the March 30th, 2017 letter from signed by Scott T. Than, T-H-A-N, Farm D, and as Exhibit E, a postcard to petitioner. It appears to be signed by Gloria Luna.
Yes, ma'am.
Thank you, Your Honor. I'll just briefly outline the facts of the case and the procedural posture. Petitioner Martin Mendizabel is now 46 years old, and he was issued his California Technician License number 21295 on February 3rd, 1997. The license is active and current until April 30, 2018. He does not report licensure in any other state. As I mentioned before, the discipline in this case resulted from petitioner's 3 alcohol-related driving convictions in 2003, 2006, and 2012, and also considered his further alcohol-related driving conviction in 1992 and a fifth conviction for battery in 1999. He agreed to a probation of 4 years effective November 7th, 2014. That means he's served a little over 2 years. So the petition seeks to terminate, including the time it would take for the board to render a decision, it would seek to terminate probation about a year and a half early. Petitioner has been generally compliant with the terms and conditions of probation. He's made full payment of cost recovery and probation monitoring costs. He had a few instances of missing drug tests and one positive test, not for alcohol, for dextromorphan, that did not result in a suspension after it was explained. And he has been compliant with all other terms and conditions of probation. Business and Professions Code 4309A2 requires a 2-year lapse before a petition for early termination of probation of 3 years or more. So this petition was proper anytime after November 7th, 2016. It's now properly before the board. It's supported by the requisite number of letters from board licensees. You need 2, he has 3, and from private citizens, you need 2, he has 7. He's also submitted proof of 30 hours of CE, which is not technically required for technician renewal, and so is not strictly a criterion for this petition, but is certainly helpful to the board to demonstrate his self-education. So at that point, I'd submit subject to cross-examination, Your Honor.
All right, thank you. Mr. Mendezabel, would you please raise your right hand? Do you solemnly swear or affirm under penalty of perjury that the testimony you're about to give in this proceeding be the truth and the whole truth?
Yes.
All right, and sir, obviously you're representing yourself. We don't have the typical question-and-answer format. However, you know why you're here, and this would be your opportunity to directly address the board with any testimony about in support of your petition. When you're concluded with that, Mr. Room will have an opportunity to ask you questions, and the board members will also have an opportunity to question you. So you can proceed.
I mean, I'm fully aware and conscious of why I'm here, for, primarily for the alcohol-related incidences of, driving under the influences. I take full responsibility for that. I'm extremely remorseful for it. Done a lot to remedy issues that I had, obvious issues that I had within myself in my personal life. At no point did that ever cross over into the scope of pharmacy or to my professional work ethic or performance or anything. Prior to being put on the probation, at that point I had already had about a year, if not probably more, of sobriety with not drinking anything. In addition to that, I was also attending AA on a semi-regular basis because it wasn't mandatory at the time. It was just, me doing it. And the last 4 years or so, I have been working extremely, very diligently and very thoroughly at, self-reflection and looking into myself to whatever issue I had in my personal life. And I've made peace with my past. I've, grown a lot in that aspect. What I said when I met with the board on November 7th or something of 2014, I have never disrespected the practice of pharmacy. Pharmacy is my passion. I have given my life to the people that I serve because that's what I live for. And it's been demonstrated in the reference letters that I've gotten. The unsolicited comments and accolades of praise from people. I say it extremely humbly, but at the same time proud of the recognition for the work that I've given, that I've done. And I continue to go to AA, the required minimum of 2 times a week, and additional whenever I have the time. To get a signature, I have to be there, an hour and a half for the full course of it sometimes. If I get out of work at a certain time, I'll go there and I'll be there for an hour. I don't get a signature because I wasn't there for an hour and a half, but I still get the minimum required and then some. I've also, in the last 4 years or so, been very into, self-help, via Tony Robbins, Zig Ziglar, John Maxwell, spiritual growth. I had issues. I honestly had issues. I recognized that they were unaddressed. They were, stuff that I hadn't, really worked on before, And as far as work was always a sanctuary for me. Work was my refuge, That was where it wasn't about me anymore. It was about the people, And when you take away the issue of you. You know, there's no time for self-pity. There's no time for whatever. It's about the people you're serving, you know, and doing everything the best that you can. I've, like I said, I've worn my heart on my sleeve in the field of pharmacy. I've visited people in the hospital. I've, went to convalescent homes. A week and a half ago, I drove 3.5 hours to Calexico to visit one of my prior patients that wanted to see me. She's 87 years old and went, has been through chemo, been through cancer, been through, through so many things. I'm thinking, whatever I am facing, I inflicted on myself, and it's minimal by all means to compare to some of the situations that other people go through. 2 weeks ago, I didn't know that I was going to be here in Sacramento. I am so thankful and grateful that I had the opportunity to be here to meet with you. I thank you for your time, that I had the opportunity to have the money at hand to buy a flight, and to pay over here. And since the time that I've been on probation, I've probably spent approximately $15,000, which is about 20% of my net salary on testing alone. I would like to address the compliance, issues or potential issues. Since the random testing for alcohol that I have to do is daily, not monthly, not weekly. Since I've been put on probation, 875 days have passed. I had 4 missed check-ins. Of one of those check-ins, all of them happened within 6 months of being put on the probation, because it's a different lifestyle that you have to adjust to, One of those check-ins was that I didn't realize I had to check in by 8 o'clock. I checked in after, and I missed it. That day I still went and tested, I had 1 positive test for dextromethorphan because I was extremely sick during flu season. I work in a pharmacy. I'm exposed to it constantly. I had no point that I missed work. That was documented by my direct supervisor and work monitor, Scott Dant, that I took dextromethorphan. I was telling the board members as well that First Lab that administers or monitors this testing thing at no point gave me a list of substances to avoid until after the situation, and that to me was a big thing. When I met with the board in November of 2014, I told them what medications I take, insulins or allergy medications or stuff like that. They told me to avoid any pseudoephedrine products because that could show up, understood, and everything like that. They told me to avoid any meals prepped with alcohol, understood, So like I said, I wanted to touch base on the things that have come up, and those are the things that come up. I fell behind on my monthly payments that I was making to the board. To avoid that from happening again, I took out a loan against my 401k to completely pay off the board within 13 months of the probation period. In addition to the $6,100, there's also been monitoring costs, probably adding to approximately another $600. So it's been a financial stress, if you want to call it that, but it's been worth it because I had already started a mission to work on myself, and the fact that this probation thing fell into place too just added to it. I'm probably in the best place in my life. Like I said, pharmacy has never been an issue, but my personal life, I've made peace with my past, and that's why I just want to put this behind me. In addition, the testing that I have to do is it has to be observed by a male. I basically, even if I were to leave the state, or I can't leave the state for more than 24 hours. If I were to get permission to leave the state, say I have a friend that lives in Vegas or whatever, and I still have to check in. If I check in and if I'm scheduled or selected to test that day, I have to find a place in a city that I don't know, have to hope that it's open, and on top of that, make sure that there's a man there, or else they can't perform the test. So if I go there, even if I'm there, I'm ready. If there's not a man there, they're going to turn me away. This morning, I caught a flight from Long Beach Airport to be here tonight. At 5 in the morning, I checked to see if I had the test for today, and luckily I didn't. If I had to, I would have had to have gone and in the morning and trying to do that, prior to, coming over here, or, by the time I get back home today, possibly not having, a place to give the test, or looking for, I've never been to Sacramento. I don't even know where downtown is or anything, or where to go. So there's just so many issues. I haven't been able to basically do anything, which, it has helped me with the financial, afford, the financial cost of this, But like I said, it's been difficult, but by no means has it been invaluable. It's been, I am extremely thankful for the experience. I am grateful to the board for staying the revocation of my license, allowing me to work and allowing me to practice. And at no time do I feel that any of my actions have given the board reason to believe that that was an incorrect decision that they made by staying, the revocation. And if you have something to ask me, feel free. I for what I do for other people, that's stayed the same. For what I do for me, that's been a little bit more. I connect a lot with people due to music. There's a convalescent home that's close to where I live that every year out of my pocket, whether I'm paying, $400 a month for alcohol monitoring or not, on Cinco de Mayo, I take a mariachi group to play for them. And, some of these people don't have visitors. Some of these people don't have anybody there for them. We talk about music, whatever. Every year, the thank you letter from the city of Bellflower, every year for the back to school programs, I donate backpacks for the kids. Every year for the Thanksgiving and the Christmas, I donate for that as well. And, I'm a firm believer that, that giving is the reason, to do things, and I don't give because I have a lot, but, as they say, I give because I know what it's like to have nothing, and that's very, very important. And I've never, as turmoil as my life has been at some times, I have never changed my belief in that my purpose in life is to make a difference in other people's lives. And I've lived that. I've walked patients to the grave. I've went to people's funerals. That postcard that passed around, there was a lady that was in Spain that thought about me while on vacation in Spain and sent me a postcard to say hello, and it's just those things I'm extremely proud of, I would like to put this behind me, but like I said, I'm in a place where whatever the board's decision is, obviously I will abide by it, I will respect it, and I will be at peace with it. I humbly do ask the consideration for the termination of this, just to put this behind me.
Thank you very much, sir.
Thank you, ma'am.
Any cross-examination?
Thank you, Your Honor. Mr. Mendizabal, do you consider yourself an alcoholic or a problem alcohol user?
I don't consider myself an alcoholic. I consider myself that I definitely abused alcohol as a symptom of other issues that I had that were unaddressed. I think that the issue with people and drinking is that they try to stop drinking and they never get to the underlying cause of why they drink. So they stop and then they just go back to it, and my issues were completely different. And through, like I said, a lot of soul searching, a lot of everything, I've been told by so many people, you're not an alcoholic, you're just stupid, and I kind of chuckle at it, but I kind of like, my issues were, personal, family issues from when I was a child, different things, feelings that I had never, worked, and alcohol was just a symptom, or an escape,
So your alcohol-related driving convictions spanned 20 years, from 1992 to 2012.
Yes, sir.
Would you say that during that entire 20 years you were having this problematic relationship to alcohol, or?
I would say so, sir.
So I just wanted to review one of your answers to the petition. Question 11 asks, are you or have you ever been habitually intemperate in the use of alcohol or other drugs? And you answered no. What did you understand that question to be asking you, and why was your answer no?
Like a habitual dependence, like where, like it's an overwhelming consumption of your life,
Okay.
And I didn't believe that was the case. I mean, I definitely drank too much and drove, and that was wrong, and I take full responsibility for it. But like I said, those were in the specific times in my personal life. It wasn't, like a daily thing. It wasn't a weekly thing. It just, when it happened, sometimes excessively.
And other than the AA meetings that you've attended and the Tony Robbins related programs, have you undergone any other form of counseling or treatment to address the issues that led to those convictions? Whether the alcohol related or the family and personal related issues?
I made peace with my father, which a lot of it has to do with that. So I don't know if that would be considered counseling, but I worked that. That was part of working a major issue in my life. I have people that I look up in a mentor standpoint. One of the people that I'm referring to right now is actually a patient that I met through work that we've become. He's like 70 years old. He's almost kind of like a, I don't know, father figure kind of person or whatever. But he wrote a reference letter in the original case, not this case, but the case, and just different perspective on life, and like sometimes people to break down things to you in a way that you could see them better, or so yeah, it's been a continuous work in progress. Even my, if you want to call it testimony, to you is therapeutic for me, and just to be able to talk about it and to be able to share with you, so yeah, it's nonstop,
Do you consider your time spent in AA a form of treatment for your alcohol-related issues or for the issues that underlay your use of alcoholism?
Definitely. I consider it therapeutic for everything in many, many ways, to live better, just even the serenity prayer, to accept things, to accept the things you cannot change, the courage to change the things you can, and the wisdom to know the difference, and I think for many years I wasn't able to do that,
So when you stand up in an AA meeting and share, do you refer to yourself as an alcoholic, or do you use some other terminology to describe yourself?
I use my name.
Okay. And you don't say I am an alcoholic? Not typically?
No.
So when you refer to AA as treatment, I just wanted to review with you your answer to question 12 on the petition, where you say, have you ever been or are you currently under observation or treatment for mental disorders, alcoholism, narcotic, or hypnotic drug addiction? And you answered no. And I just wanted to ask what that question meant to you and what your no response meant. You don't consider your AA a treatment for alcoholism, in other words?
I guess I didn't see it that way, but yeah, it would be a treatment for alcoholism, problem drinking, just a lot of, I find it really interesting that I don't know how familiar, courts or judges or, the board is with like AA or what it actually consists of or what it doesn't. But, like I said, a lot of it has nothing to do with drinking, just, the way that, like your expectation of other people, your belief systems on, other people, when in reality you can only control yourself, and just different things. So it's helped me immensely, immensely. Drinking or not drinking for me was very, very, very simple to just not do anymore. Dealing with life can be, challenging, and that's what I have found most rewarding from the program.
Do you maintain a sobriety date, a date on which was the last time you consumed alcohol, or the date after the last time you consumed alcohol?
I don't have a date because it kind of happened spontaneously, it kind of happened without thinking.
Mm-hmm.
But at the point that I was put on probation, which was the 7th of November, I had over a year.
Okay.
So I just, I guess symbolically I would say, November 7th of, 2013. But like I said, since it wasn't anything that I was specifically, I'm going to do it today, I don't have a date.
You're obviously not drinking alcohol currently, right?
No, sir.
As a condition of your probation. if and when your probation is completed, either by its natural lapse or by the board's action, do you anticipate that you would again consume alcohol on
I
an
do
occasional
not.
basis?
I do not.
So you plan to avoid alcohol for the rest of your life?
I don't plan on consuming it, so if that's the way that we're gonna interpret it, then yes.
Okay.
My life has, like I said, as difficult as it's been, my life is, I'm at probably the best place in my life that I've ever been. And sadly, if this wouldn't have all happened, I probably, wouldn't have been there. And I'm sorry, it's just, there's so many things. But, what I forgot to say was in addition to everything that I'm going through here, that I take full responsibility for, there was some pretty heavy criminal, prosecution, penalty, sentencing that I also went through, jail time, being in jail, for drunk driving with people that are in there for, murder and for rape and for different things, really makes you think like, what am I doing here? What have I done to, and like I said, I've complied, I've been dealing with this probably for close to 6 years,
So you agreed to a 4-year probation, which was what the board thought was appropriate at the time, and have served a little over 2 years. So I'm just curious: is there some specific justification you can offer for why the board should treat you differently than others who might be in the same situation and allow you to serve a lesser period of probation than someone who might get the same probation based on your convictions? What makes you subject to that kind of special treatment? And part of that might be, what difference would it make to you? What about probation? What about an early termination of probation would make your life easier?
My issues, my convictions, I understand the whole reason for being put on the probation, but it's been documented. It's very clearly been documented that at no point has my performance, been less than, excellent. I work for CVS, which is the most demanding pharmacy company on the planet. I am still employed as a lead technician with them. I have a letter of recommendation from my boss, my pharmacy manager, my previous pharmacy manager, my pharmacy manager's boss, which is the district manager, stating that the letter that Scott gave me. Scott is my PharmD pharmacy manager and worksite monitor. When I read it, because I didn't know he was writing that. I mean, he emphasizes that, in his opinion, at no point have I ever been a safety concern to patient, safety, and that's kind of, all I can say, because it speaks for itself that there's the personal issues speak for themselves too. The criminal convictions speak for themselves, obviously, but the work performance, the work ethic, the unsolicited comments and praise from patients, also speaks for themselves. As far as what difference would it make for me, like I said, 20% of my net salary goes just to alcohol testing. I have been sick, or I have not been able to take medication for fear of testing positive for dextromethorphan, which, like I said, once again, I was not aware of. About 3 weeks ago, I had an issue with my sciatica, which was just killing me. At no point did I miss work. I got a prescription for naproxen and for cyclobenzaprine, Flexeril, a muscle relaxer. And I spoke to Catherine Sill, who's my probation
monitor.
No, not the monitor. That's Jane Russell.
She's your inspector. You're
she's the
assigned
inspector. And I told her about it. And having the prescription, she goes, "Don't take it." And she goes, "Well, because it can make you drowsy and this and that." She goes, "But you're going to end up getting suspended, and then they're going to review it and everything like that." So even with the prescription, I'm being advised not to take the medication. So like I said, I've endured, illnesses where I haven't been able to take, NyQuil. The positive test was for dextromethorphan, because I took some like Mucinex DM or something. So I like I said, I can't even go anywhere, even coming here to participate in this, was a potential issue because of the testing, I have not had any, positive tests for alcohol or anything. Like I said, I've been very transparent in everything. There's never, in 20 plus years of pharmacy, there's never been one issue. I have, nothing. I'm still employed, I mean, if they wanted to get rid of me, if they had any reason to, this would open the door for them. And, my pharmacy has backed me up completely.
Speaking of employment, if you were no longer on probation, would you have different desires as to employment you might seek, or would you stay in your current position?
This is a personal opinion, but I don't, 20 years in the pharmacy business, I don't agree with everything that CVS does for pharmacy. I don't. I'm not alone in that, I'm very loyal and I've been with them for, the longest time, but I've been offered other jobs, I've been offered other jobs, from independent pharmacies or whatever the case would be. And, whether I would consider seriously taking them or not, I don't know, but that's not even an option based on this situation.
And then lastly, what can you tell the board to provide them with the assurance that you've been rehabilitated from whatever influences or character flaws led to those multiple convictions?
I mean, I'm here, with the smile on my face. I'm speaking from the heart. I'm sharing my experiences. There's only so much that I can say, other than like I said, in the time that I've been on probation, my work ethic has never stopped. My desire to help people has continued to grow. Even at AA, in some way or another, I have become a mentor to younger people that come in, and like I said, I'm a total acceptance with why everything happened, because it was to get to the next step, and like I said, the timing of it that I had already, like I said, being in jail, being in jail is not a good thing. Being in jail is not a good thing, and being in jail with people that are there for, some very, very, I mean, murder and rape is very, very severe, and you being in there, because you're a drunk driver, it really makes you, wake up, having to urinate into a cup while somebody watches you, is kind of humiliating too, and like I said, the point of getting through this is to be in a better place, not to go back to the same. And like I said, these last few years have been, bless you, these past few years have been the most difficult, but probably the best years of my life. And I am not about to give that up for anything.
Nothing further, Your Honor.
Thank you. Any questions from the board? I want to begin with Mr. Schad.
In the communications you've had with the board, you've been very articulate. You've been the most articulate person that's been before us. And so I just wanted to compliment you on that. And also, I like the way you addressed Mr. Room's questions about AA. You did not give the pat answers that AA prefers. You searched yourself, and I felt like your answers were more sincere and very, very well thought out. So the issues you came to terms with, was that going through the steps of AA, or was that separate, or was that?
A little bit of both. I don't necessarily agree with everything in AA either,
Right.
But what I've learned from life, and particularly I've learned a lot from life, is just, guess what? Take the good out of everything, Take the good out of everything, and that has been a strong basis, for everything I've made. I've made friendships, in AA, through, I go to AA in Spanish. I go to AA in Spanish, even though English is, my primary language. But it's kind of funny because you don't use the word because you use padrino, but it's like your sponsor, you know, and people that have lived through other stuff, you know, and I've learned, you know, and at the same time I've shared with other people, you know, because I'm 46 years old now and I see, you know, people that are 22, 23, you know, and it's kind of like, you know, I wish I would have had somebody that talked to me at that point, you know, that kind of put it in perspective and would have avoided a lot of things, you know, but obviously I can't live in the past, you know, I have to live from this moment and be thankful, you know, like I said, I've never been in Sacramento. 2 weeks ago, I didn't know I was going to be in Sacramento, and I woke up, you know, and like, hey, we're here, you know, and I'm thankful for it, you know, I'm grateful for it, you know, and I'm happy to be alive, you know, I'm happy to share with people, and that you know, I'm happy to do what I do, you know. It's funny because I share with people, you know, pharmacy is a very, very stressful business, you know, very, very stressful retail pharmacy, yet I wouldn't give it up for anything. I couldn't see myself working in a closed-door pharmacy, you know, because I feed off the people feed off of me, you know, and it's a thing, you know, and I've had people tell me, you know, I drive past 3 pharmacies to come see you, you know, and I thank them, you know, and it's been an adventure, you know, and I'm at the best place in my life right now, and I'm not going to throw that away because it would be disrespectful to everybody, and I think more importantly to myself. I think I deserve to be happy, and I am happy.
Mr. Sanchez?
I know that the 4 DUIs.
Yes, sir.
And they you know, varying years. You go a little span before you got the first one, the second, third,
Yes, sir.
fourth. You say you made peace with your past.
Yes, sir.
What did you not get the first 3 times?
Huh?
I mean, what caused you to just keep getting back into those? Because you did well right after the first one, second, third, then you just fell back into that.
It goes back to the like not necessarily exactly, but it goes back to what I was telling you about the person that just wants to stop drinking and then just stops drinking and that's all they're doing, but they don't work on any of it, you know, and that's kind of like what it was. They were unaddressed, you know. I mean, you know, a big issue in my life, you know, was my dad, you know, a feeling of abandonment, a feeling of not being loved, you know, everything like that, you know, and that had never really been addressed or addressed at the level that it should have been, and it's pretty sad that it happened, you know, when I'm 40 years old or whatever, you know, but it would have been sadder if it never happened, you know, and I think that made the biggest difference. And I just think, you know, like the timing, the magical timing, if you want to call it that, like, you know, when Mr. Rome, I believe, asked me if I'm sorry, they asked me if I had a sobriety date. I go, I don't have a sobriety date because I didn't like plan on it for it to be that day. It kind of just happened, you know, and like I said, the fact that I had already started working on something by myself, you know, and then all of a sudden, bam, this kind of like, you know, this was kind of like an additional enforcement to it.
Yeah, I just highly recommend it. I know that you never say never, okay? But if you ever find yourself in that weak situation, there's Uber, there's Lyft, man.
Oh,
Makes a
no.
You know what I'm saying?
Yeah, no.
I'm just saying you can
No, I-
go on and
No.
It's, you talk about not just yourselves, but you can save someone else's life. I've been in law enforcement for 28 years as a state investigator and police officer, and I'm just telling you that it does save lives.
Yeah.
And if you ever find yourself in that machismo side, and just take it.
Yeah, no, most definitely, and it's interesting that because you said not just for yourself, but for somebody else. You know, I really there's a lot of people suffering out there. There's a lot of people hurting. You know, and when you're not part of it, you see things differently. You know, and you see people and you say, hey, what are you doing? You know what I mean? And you kind of like, you know, when you see an issue, you know, you kind of like tell them, hey, dude, you know what this isn't normal. This isn't the way it should be, you know, or something like that, you know. And it's kind of like become like people are my passion. I don't know if that's obvious, you know, but people are my passion. And like I said, I spent years, you know, I'm an overanalytical person, and I overthink things too much and sometimes not enough, you know. But I spent years like, you know, what is the meaning of life, you know? And the meaning of life to me is to make a difference in somebody's life. And I wear my heart on my sleeve, and that's what I try to do every day of my life. You know, like I said, I flew out this morning to fly back to, tonight because I don't miss work. I don't miss work. I'm the kind of, person that if I tried to call out, like in the morning, they'll call me, well, can you come in the afternoon? And it's kind of funny because some people could call out and nobody cares, you know what I mean? So it's a compliment, it's a compliment that like, they want you there. So, I live up to my obligation, and that's, I also feel why my company has, or, my supervisors have supported me as much as they have.
I wish you luck, I just wanted to point that out.
No, and I
And
appreciate
really
it.
Consider that, because, like I say, you do very well after each
Yeah.
one, but you,
No,
you have the pattern that you've fallen back.
Yeah.
But I'm hoping that whatever you did, this seems to be the longest stretch you've had.
Yeah.
6 years, right?
No,
And,
I appreciate, any and all comments and, suggestions, but like I said, I'm at a better place in my life, and I'm a place that I've never been at, and I'm not gonna throw that away, life. I'm 46 years old, I don't know how much time I have left, but I want to enjoy it, because. But I want to. These are the best years. These are the best years of my life.
All right, thank you. Any questions, Ms. Butler?
Yes, I too wanted to, because I noticed that from 92, and then you had one in 2003, there was 11 years there, and then between 03 and 06, you had 5 years. I'm wondering, during those times, did you ever go to AA or anything?
I went to AA because I had to go to AA, but it was kind of like when you kind of have to, you're just kind of, let's get here, let's get it over with, And like I said, I never had an issue with anybody, but I never engaged anybody, and nobody really engaged me. And like I said, it was just a timing thing. It was just, as stupid as it sounds or as wise as it sounds, it just wasn't my time for it to,
So I could see that, like when you have the 11 years in between the 5 years. So I can see, and based on your answers to Josh, I sense that it wasn't like you had an alcohol problem. It's just that you drank too much when you did, and then you got in the car.
Yes, ma'am.
Okay. So the difference also is that this time you kind of addressed the problem that you never addressed before.
Exactly.
Is what I'm hearing here.
Most definitely, and then like I said, also the severity of the criminal sentencing, punishing, like I said, being in jail, it makes you think. It definitely makes you think, and that kind of like lit a spark that just kind of continues to grow, and like I said, I'm at peace with myself. I'm at peace with, I'm very thankful that the things happen the way that they happen, and they didn't happen like, more severe, and everything. And I see that, and I totally see that. And I'm not going to throw it away, because it's just, a gift. I don't want to get, overly religious, but sometimes God has to slap you around, or let you slap yourself around, to open up your eyes and say, what are you doing? You could be all this for these people, and like I was telling you, issues about like, nobody loves you, or you're not worthy, or this or that or whatever, these people that are not related to you are going to bat for you and telling you how important you are to them in their life. A year and a half ago, I was at a patient's funeral, and I was mentioned in a eulogy. I was like, if that doesn't mean that people love you, people care about you, what does, and everything. It's just, sometimes things are there, you just don't see them, and my eyes are open very, very wide, and my focus is like never before, Back to the Tony Robbins thing, it's like, what do you want and why do you want it, Because if you don't know why you want it, what happens if you get it,
Yeah, well, I can appreciate where you are now.
Yeah.
And also recognizing how hard CVS techs have to work for you to be a lead tech. is pretty impressive that you've been, that you're working as a lead tech and you've been working as a lead tech and that you've been doing a good job. So, I'm really happy to hear that you're able to continue to be a lead tech and serve the patients the way you have.
I appreciate that. Like I said, I found out 2 weeks ago about today's date. I had literally 2 hours, 3 hours to respond. My boss was there. I asked them, I go, hey, the Board of Pharmacy just called, they March 30th in Sacramento. He looks at me, you got it. You know what I mean? And that was, I felt love. I felt love, and everything like that. And, patient safety is of the utmost, patient safety is higher than patient customer service, and as a lead tech, I tell my staff because, I go, we need to watch everything we do. We are responsible for each other. I go, and one thing I always tell them, my saying is always, we succeed as individuals, we fail as a team. Like there's times that I don't even wait on a person and thanks Martin, everything like that, and I'm like, just have a great day and everything like that. I go, so, but when something goes wrong, it's like you guys, it's always it's always you guys, whether you had anything to do with it or not. So, we have to uphold the integrity of, our profession and of the pharmacy. And I'm not somebody that's been in this business for, 5 years or whatever, I've been in this game, profession, whatever you want to call it, for over 20 years. I work weekends, I work, nights, Monday I work till midnight, I work whatever's necessary because I'm in it,
I certainly can appreciate that.
And
Believe me, I understand what you have to do and what you're doing, so I can appreciate that, and I can appreciate hearing that, that something happened this time, no matter how severe it was, to really make a difference, and make a difference in the way that you see, alcohol, and the fact that you made the decision as a result, whether you are alcoholic or not, to decide not to do it anymore, and I can appreciate that.
Thank you, ma'am. Thank you.
Thank you. President Gutierrez?
Mr. Alavito, very, put a lot of hard work in it. It's very evident of all the effort that you've put in. My question to you is, after you've been involved in alcohol, as Mr. Room said, for 20 years, you're under...
After I've been involved in what? For
alcohol. You've had alcohol
Oh, okay.
situations for 20 years. So now you're in a position where you're having testing done daily.
Yes, sir.
When that
Well,
is-
it's not testing done daily. I have
It's-
to check daily to see if
How many times a week do they test?
sometimes it could be 2 days in a row. Sometimes it could be on a Monday and then on a Friday. It's typically between 4 to 5 times a month at an out-of-pocket cost of about $100 a time. So like I said, it's been very, very, very costly, but it's, obviously it hasn't been impossible because I've done it, but it's been challenging.
But the potential is there for a daily. Every day you have to be ready for that.
Exactly.
Are you going to be continuing doing AA meetings after if your petition is granted and you're no longer required to do that?
I am, like I said, I've made friends. I've known people for 3 years, through this, some people more than others. I'm definitely going to still be participating, in it, it's not like, we have our phone numbers, we call each other, we go eat, and everything like that. It's definitely a support group that's not 100% of the time in the building where it happens, but we talk about just, like I said, guess what, drink, not drinking, that was easy, dealing with life could be a little more complicated, and I hate flying, I don't avoid it, but I don't like it, and I'm on a plane and I'm just like, smiling, and everything. Like I said, my perspective on everything is, at an extremely good place, and I'm smiling like a little kid, and I'm not gonna give that back, I'm not gonna give that back, and I'm not gonna let anybody take that from me, and I'm gonna continue doing what I'm doing because I'm happier than I've ever been before, and like I said, a lot of times I don't get a signature because, it starts at 8, ends at 9:30, and if I get there at 8:30, I could be there 8:30 to 9:30, I don't get a signature. But yeah, I will definitely continue to participate, just go and shoot the feces, as they say, talk about everything, because all of a sudden you could be the kind, all of a sudden you just pick up something like, wow, and that's why it's always good to have an open ear and an open mind. And I've gotten a lot out of it because I looked for it,
Just think, if you do this, think of ways that when those stressors come, there will come, what are you going to do? Because the structure that's put in place for you is no longer there. So unless you want it to be there. So it's gonna have to be something that you're gonna want to do and
right,
and
that's,
keep up and
it-
prepare for that.
But the words that you use, because words are very powerful. Structure. That's why the issue was never part of my professional life, because in my professional life there was always structure. There was always structure. That was my domain. That's where I do my thing. And everything like that. In your personal thing. But it's kind of funny that following. Following sounds like so bad. Like it's not a cult, but like the practicing the teachings that I do, like with the Tony Robbins thing and everything, breaking patterns. You know what I mean? Mm-hmm. You have to break the pattern, or even how the Bible says, resist temptation, it'll flee. You know what I mean? But you have to resist it. You have to do it. You have to acknowledge it, and you have to do something. Faith without works is dead. So they say. And like I said, I know what to do or what not to do.
Congratulations on all the hard work and all you've done.
And like I said, that puts a smile on my face. Thank you.
Thank you, Mr. Long.
Hi. I see that you're doing very well at work, so I really want to credit you for that. But it seems like based on your past history, you always do well when you are on probation. And then right after probation, you fall into the problem again. I mean, you go all these 5 years interval.
Mm-hmm.
Now, I want to understand what is the difference that your life is right now. So, are you married or are you single?
I'm not married, so I'm single.
You live by yourself?
Yes, sir.
Okay, so you don't have any children?
I have a grown child. He's a child, but he's an adult. He's
How-
my child, but he's an adult.
And how old
He's
is that?
28.
28 years old?
Yes.
And how's your relationship with
It's had its moments. We're working on that as well.
Okay. So this is something that you didn't have when you were like 21 years ago, the first time you got into trouble, right? So now you are a father,
Yes, sir.
all right? Do you go to church
Yes, sir.
every Sunday?
Not every Sunday, sir.
Okay. Do you take your child to church?
He's an adult.
Oh, he's an adult.
Yeah, he's an
so
adult.
He has his own things to
Yeah,
do.
he has his own thing. Yeah.
And what kind of things do you do for your pastime besides work? You play sports?
I go to the gym. I'm extremely passionate about music. I like to sing. I do karaoke. I'm actually in charge of the karaoke. I don't know if people know about this, but at the group, or a lot of the AA groups, they have like once a month, or depending on the timing, twice a month, where there's a get together with a dinner and everything like that, and there's like karaoke or a DJ or whatever. It's kind of like a party just with no alcohol.
That's the AA group of people.
Yeah.
The AA?
Yeah, and in regards to that, I'm in charge of the karaoke. I'm in charge of the karaoke because, like I said, music's my thing.
And do you have any other personal friends that do other things?
Music, like I said, I'm very attached to music. Music is very important to me, and I share it with like I said, once a year, twice a year, depending on the finances of it. I take a mariachi to a convalescent home that's probably about 1.5 blocks, 2 blocks from my home. Depending on a lot of my friends play, so I pay for it, but they usually give me like a benefit, like a cut, like a lower rate. But I try to share as much, like I said, with others, because there's always somebody that didn't necessarily choose it, and they're a lot worse off than I am.
I just want to let you understand that you have been given more than a second chance by the board. A lot of times, people with past history like that, they might not even have a job.
No, I totally understand that, and that's why I also made mention that when I spoke earlier, I made mention that I appreciate them staying the revocation of the license, and that I also feel that at no point have I given them a reason to believe that that was a wrong decision that they made. So no, believe me, I am aware, and I am extremely grateful to the board, to everybody.
So when you come in front of the board and ask for an early termination, I really thought that maybe something you're overstretching a little bit based on your past history. But I could suggest to you, if the testings are a little too much, would you be happy that if this board would grant you a little reduction on the frequency of times that you're being tested?
Oh, most definitely.
You'd be happy with that?
I would be happy with anything, sir.
And just something that we could consider. Thank you.
Thank you.
Mr. Washington?
I have nothing but praise for you, and there's no doubt that you're a bright guy, you present very well, you're a good writer, you got a good future ahead of you. And so I can only suggest that you continue to succeed as an individual. Good luck to you.
Thank you very much, sir.
Mr. Wong?
Well, of the 4 year I'm here, you're the longest speaker, longest case. Actually, you are a model case for me. I've been, I was on the board here. I always advocate that we have looked at this DUI a little differently. I mean, similar, you're on a model case that I always ask the question, I asked the board before, did you get any warning when you get first DUI or anything from the board to give you a warning so you will not repeat it?
No, sir.
See, that's one of my objections is that, I mean, if people know about, that they might get disciplined, maybe they will think twice on the second one. So actually, you did not get any warning at all
No,
from
sir.
the board pharmacy after the first DUI.
No, sir.
So did the board pharmacy know about your first DUI?
I mean, they know about it. I don't know if they knew about it at the time or.
He wasn't licensed at the time of his first DUI.
Yeah,
Okay.
at the very first. The very first I wasn't licensed at that time.
Okay, when you're licensed, when you get DUI, did the board was informed or did the board know? So the board know, right?
I'm assuming. I don't know. I don't know exactly how that.
You did not report to the board. You're not required to report to the
It
board.
wasn't required to report, sir.
Yeah, I agree with Alan. You are and Ricardo. I mean, they already asked my question already. You are a very articulate speaker, and I wish you could, I mean, if you are drunk in the work, I would throw the book at you right away already. But I say most of the time that we discipline all those cases, that they're not happen at work. So that's why I look at things a little differently. So I hope the lesson that you learn, since you articulate so well, I kind of like to see you, maybe write an article for the script, and then warn all the other pharmacists, technicians about your experience. How to avoid, getting in trouble like you did, and how you get out, how you appreciate what you have now, and maybe some of them think twice before they repeat themselves. So I don't know about the board. They think something that you could write an article and then we could put on the script, so the other licensee could learn from your experience.
Actually, I wouldn't have any issue whatsoever in doing something like that. If I could keep a confidentiality, like where I would use a separate name, like Bob or whatever. You know what I mean? Yeah, like a pen name or something like that. Because that's that. This is a highly confidential thing. And everything. And it's obviously it's nothing that I'm proud of.
Yeah.
It's nothing that I'm proud of.
Well, I don't consider you an alcoholic because alcoholic, I think they have to drink every day. They have to consume X amount of alcohol. But you're not drinking every day, so you're not considered alcoholic.
I'm not drinking anything. I'm not drinking at all.
So I just can't understand why people, when you get a warning, I mean, if you get a warning, you discipline once, I mean, why you gotta keep on repeating it? So, is there any reason? I mean, when you get in trouble the first time, thrown in jail, then so why you keep doing the same thing when you know what you're getting into?
a lot of it, parts of that I can't answer because I don't know. You know, it was just like, you know, my time, you know, I wasn't there on the mindset yet. But a big factor in pushing you to get to that mindset was the severity of the last conviction, you know, and like I said, you know, the worst day in front of, you know, a court, a hearing, a board, whoever you want to say it, you know, is better than your best day, you know, being incarcerated, you know. And when I'm saying incarcerated, I'm not talking in a little room by yourself. I'm talking like, you know, in a big room, you know, of where anything could happen, and literally anything you know, can happen. And I am very, you know, God fearing and God believing that, you know, that nothing happened, you know, nothing happened, because it's scary. It's very, very scary. But I think that was a turning point and pushing me in the right direction. But it wasn't enough by itself. It ignited a fire within me that I had to you know, follow, and you know, and I'm just thankful. I'm really, really thankful for everything, you know, and you know, like I said, back to the Tony Robbins thing, you know, he was talking about, or actually it was another gentleman that's associated with him, and he was talking about that if you see a terrible movie, would you keep seeing it again? You know, and he's like, nobody would, right? So why are you doing that in your mind? Why are you doing that in yourself? You need to just, you know, and everything. And it's like, you know, and sometimes, you know, like I said, you need people to put things in different perspective for you. And the interesting about it is that we all have that power. You know, I've put things in different perspective to other people that they've like, you know, hey, you know, you have a point. And I'm like, you know,
Okay.
yeah.
Okay. I think we are long enough on this
No.
case. And then
Yeah, I'm sorry. I'm sorry.
And the last question is that, I mean, would it make a difference if after you get your first DUI, if a board pharmacy give you a warning, and if you have a second one, your license may be in trouble, and or you have to go through all this testing. All this
I think it would most definitely make a difference.
So you think it would help in the future?
Yeah.
Other
Obviously not to me, but to other people that, you know, I think it would definitely help.
Okay.
Most definitely. I strongly suggest that. And like I said, another thing, I don't know who handles all the testing for the Board of Pharmacy for California, but First Lab never gave me a sheet or anything stating what needed to be avoided other than the obvious that I knew that was alcohol until after I tested positive for dextromethorphan.
Yeah, that's good. That's good to know.
Yeah.
Good luck to you. Thank you.
I appreciate it, sir.
All right.
Thank you for having me.
Thank you very much. Any follow-up, Mr. Ram?
No, Your Honor.
All right, and I think the board is really well aware of your position, sir. Thank you very much. At this time, this will conclude the petition hearing in this matter. The record is closed in this case, and the matter is submitted for decision. We're off the record in this matter, and we will proceed to the next petition.
Thank you, sir.
Thank you, sir. Appreciate it. Thank you for your time. Sorry about the long wind, but.
Would you like to break for lunch?
We have 4 more, so you're not going to get them all done before lunch anyway. So.
Lunch is here.
All right, we'll go off the record for 30 minutes. Thank you. And we'll call the Bolahari case when we return.
Which one?
Bolahari.
Okay.
We're back on the record. We're going to skip to Bolahari. We're going to start with Bolahari, first one. Then we're going to skip to Manayan, who has a flight, and then we'll go back to French, and then now Chai Tao, and that will conclude the petitioners.
Bolahari.
Bolahari.
Are we pronouncing that correctly? Okay.
Good afternoon. We're on the record before the Pharmacy Board to hear the petition for reduction of penalty filed by, on behalf of NC Cadence Bolahari. This is Office of Administrative Hearings, case 2017-030760. Today is March 30th, 2017. And if we could have the appearance of the board members, beginning with Mr. Wong.
Stan Weiser, professional member. sitting next to
Dictalol professional member.
Debbie Veal, professional member.
Amy Gutierrez, professional member.
Lavanza Butler, professional member.
Ricardo Sanchez, public member.
Alan Shadd, professional member.
Albert Wong. Albert Wong, professional member.
Thank you, and I'm
Not
Marilyn
very.
Bullard. I'm the Administrative Law Judge assigned to this matter. May I have appearances on behalf of the Deputy Attorney General?
Thank you, Your Honor. Supervising Deputy Attorney General Joshua Room appearing on behalf of the people pursuant to Government Code 11522.
Thank you, and on behalf of the petitioner.
Ivan Petrzelka on behalf of NC Cadence Bolohari.
Thank you, and Ms. Bolohara, Mr. Petrzelka, you were present here during the hearing, the first hearing this morning, and heard the explanation of the hearing
Yes, Your Honor.
process, is that correct? So you understand you have the right to testify, to call witnesses on your own behalf about why the petition should be granted. Thank you.
Thank you.
Do you have any questions about the manner in which the hearing will proceed today?
No, Your Honor.
All right, thank you. Mr. Room, could you begin with the overview and address the exhibits?
Thank you, Your Honor. I've placed before Your Honor a total of 3 documentary exhibits. The first being a one-page exhibit, Ms. Bolohari's agreement to have this hearing electronically recorded as opposed to reported by a court reporter. I'm asked that be marked an exhibit, marked and admitted.
Any objection?
No objections, Your Honor.
Marked and admitted as Exhibit A.
Second documentary exhibit is Ms. Bolohari's petition for early termination / modification of her probation and related documents. It includes a 4-page cover letter from Mr. Petrzelka, the petition for reduction of penalty itself, several typewritten pages from petitioner more fully answering the questions in the petition and also including a personal statement, her efforts to seek employment unsuccessfully while she's been on probation, a letter from her probation monitor showing that she complied with the psych evaluation term as of May 19, 2015. The reports from the 2 psych evaluations that she had done, both concluding that no further psychological services or treatment were required. A 3-page transcript from Cal North State showing that her completion of the PharmD program there between 2011 and 2015. 2 pages documenting her completion of the initial 2-day program and 6-month follow-up for the Professional Boundaries Incorporated Ethics course. And 7 pages, which was partial documentation of her completed CE, and then there are also appended certificates demonstrating a completion of 85.25 hours of board-approved CE between May 2016 and January 2017. Then there are letters of recommendation, a total of 7, 5 of them from board licensed pharmacists and 2 from private citizens. All 7 of those were verified as to authorship. Ask that be marked and admitted, Your Honor.
Any objection?
No objections.
All right, and I just also indicate that on the first page of the petition includes the date of birth and the personal residence, and those 2 items will be redacted, and as redacted, the Exhibit B will be admitted.
Thank you, Your Honor. And the final documentary exhibit are the underlying administrative case documents. There's the accusation in case number 4474 that was filed against petitioner's 2 licenses that she held at the time. She had a pharmacist intern license and a pharmacy technician license, which had been canceled but was still in effect. On September 6, 2013, that alleged 5 causes for discipline arising out of petitioner's August 13, 2011 conduct, when while working as a technician, she forged a refill authorization request for herself for an alprazolam prescription that had been written for her but was not yet subject to refill. And she processed the prescription at her place of work at Costco using another technician's initials. In February 2015, petitioner and her then counsel, Nicole Hendrickson, agreed to and signed a stipulated settlement and disciplinary order admitting to the accusation except for an allegation about her work history at Costco, and stipulated to a disciplinary order accepting the disciplinary surrender of her technician license and revoking her intern pharmacist license, but staying that revocation in favor of 6 years probation, standard terms and conditions including $12,215 in cost recovery, the mental health evaluation that I referenced earlier, a supervised practice term, a term prohibiting ancillary personnel supervision, an ownership prohibition, and an ethics course. The stipulation also specified that in the event petitioner gained a pharmacist license, which she has, it would be subject to the same probation term. So the probation is now effectively on her pharmacist license. That became the decision on the order of the board by adopting the stipulation effective April 8th, 2015. Ask that that be marked and admitted.
Any objection?
No objections, Your Honor.
Exhibit C is marked and admitted.
So petitioner NC Cadence Boluhari is now 38 years old and was issued California Pharmacist License number 74301 on December 30th, 2015. The license is current to September 30th, 2017. No other licensure reported. As I mentioned, the discipline in this case resulted from a single case of petitioner's forgery and refilling of a refill of a prescription for alprazolam for herself in 2011. She agreed to a probation of 6 years effective April 8th, 2015. That means she's served a little under 2 years. So she seeks to terminate about 4 years early. In addition to that request, or in the alternative, the petition seeks to eliminate 2 terms that are in her current probation. The supervised practice term, which requires that she be supervised during her practice by a licensed pharmacist, not on probation with the board. And the second term is the prohibition on her supervision of ancillary personnel. So she cannot currently supervise ancillary personnel in the pharmacy as other pharmacists do. Petitioner has been generally compliant with the terms and conditions of probation. She completed the required ethics course in October 2015. She had a 12-month follow-up scheduled for October 2016. I assume that's now also been completed, but she can testify to that. She completed the two mental health evaluations and was cleared on this requirement in May 2015. She has paid all probation monitoring fees, and she's timely with payments toward the cost recovery amount, although because she's only 2 years into probation, there's still a balance that remains of $8,075. Business and Professions Code 4309A2 requires a 2-year lapse before a petition for early termination of probation of 3 years or more. So this petition is actually only proper after April 8th, 2017. But because the decision will likely not be issued before that date, it's up to the board whether you want to, consider it in anticipation of that date, and and therefore the order would be effective that date, and that should be fine. Furthermore, Business and Professions Code 4309A3 requires a 1-year lapse before a petition seeking modification of a term or condition. So that petition could have been brought anytime after April 8th, 2016. So as to the request to eliminate one or both of those terms, that's certainly properly before the board at this time. The petition is supported by the requisite letters from board licensees. She has 5 where 2 are required, and private citizens, she has the 2 required. It's also supported by 85.25 hours of board-approved CE between May 2016 and January 2017, which is substantially more than the guideline figure of 30 CE hours that's required for renewal and therefore for a petition. I submit at this point, Your Honor, subject to cross-examination.
Thank you. And Mr. Petrozelka, it's my understanding you had indicated that you had provided the board with additional documents, but those were all included in these exhibits. Is that correct?
That is correct, Your Honor.
All right, thank you. And I'm assuming your client intends to testify.
Yes, Your Honor.
All right.
If I may, I would like to make a brief opening statement to clarify
Please
some of
proceed.
the practice. Approximately 6 years ago in 2011, Ms. Boluhari had made an error in judgment, and it was an error of youthful indiscretion and, quite frankly, lack of education or lack of knowledge, but it was still an error. For various procedural reasons, the disciplinary matter did not come to resolution until mid-2015, which was approximately 2 years ago. And at that time, Ms. Boluhari was in process of getting her pharmacy degree at the California North State University in Elk Grove. She subsequently completed that. As part of the agreed upon penalty, as Mr. Room enumerated, was a 6 years probation, and the probation also included 2 additional terms that proved to be extremely onerous and extremely punitive for Dr. Boluhari, and that is the term of supervised practice and the term prohibiting her from supervising ancillary personnel. These 2 activities are the essential core duties of a pharmacist. The pharmacist must be able to work on his or her own and must be able to supervise ancillary personnel in order to perform the duties of a pharmacist. So essentially, these two additional terms made Ms. Bolhari unemployable as a pharmacist, and it effectively prohibited her from demonstrating to the board that she did in fact rehabilitate it, that she is able and willing to perform the duties of and responsibilities of pharmacist in a safe and responsible manner. And that is the request that we are currently making to for the board to kindly consider the magnitude and the severity of the penalty that was assessed for that one single violation that occurred nearly 6 years ago. And we certainly hope that the board will give it due consideration. Also, as a clarification on the petition, our petition was not to early terminate. At the time of submission, which was almost a year ago, we asked for modification of the length of the probation. Again, due to some administrative delays, the petition didn't get to be heard until today, which effectively would mean that we're asking for early termination. But the original request was for modification of the length of the probation to 2 years. And with that, I'd like to...
Thank you. Ms. Bolhari, would you please raise your right hand? Do you solemnly swear or affirm under penalty of perjury that the testimony you're about to give in this proceeding will be the truth and the whole truth?
Yes.
Thank you.
I've advised counsel I have no objection to her testifying in a narrative, just in the interest of time.
All right. It's your election, sir, if you want to pose questions or have her directly address the board.
I would do a few questions and the narrative. So, Dr. Bolhari, could you tell us if you're currently employed?
First of all, I want to thank the board for taking the time and review my petition and giving me the opportunity to be heard. As far as the employment, no, I'm just volunteering at Garfield Medical Center as a pharmacist, but no pay. It's not paid.
So you are working as a pharmacist, but not for a compensation. You're
No.
volunteering. Okay. And how many hours a week or a month are you working in that capacity?
40 hours a month, so it's I attend 10 hours per week. It was a board requirement, so I had to maintain that 40 hours.
When did you obtain your pharmacy licensure?
It's December 30th, 2015.
2015.
Yes.
Have you been trying to actively obtain work as a pharmacist during that
Yes.
period of time?
Yes, actually, I had a map around the 50 miles radius of my house, and I tried to call in like all the pharmacists that I thought they might have hiring, and about 13 of them they said that they have hiring. So I sent them my resume, and they asked me to go for an interview. When I went there, I had a copy of my resume and also a copy of my accusation and the board decision. So because I wanted to be honest with them before wasting their time, I just wanted to tell them about my situation. And for all of them, when I told them that I'm in probation and they look at the accusation and the result, they just denied. Even believe it or not, it was really hard for me to find a volunteer position because everywhere I went, they didn't want to accept a newly graduated pharmacist with the probation and the license. And the only one that I had, it was the Garfield Medical Center, which I was doing my last APP rotation when I received the decision of the board, and my supervisor, Dr. Chan and Dr. Liu, decided to give me the opportunity to stay in the hospital and work with them because they already knew me. So far, no luck in finding a paid position.
In your petition, you've stated that you've engaged in some mitigation effort after the incident. The incident occurred approximately 6 years ago. Could you outline for us the mitigation efforts that you've engaged, whether it was educational, whether it was practice?
Actually, in 2011, August, I started pharmacy school. So I fully dedicated myself in studying. I was a good student. I was engaged in so many different organizations and charity work, and I held some positions as vice president and treasurer in 2 organizations, and also I started doing some internship as an IPP and APP which I got hired by one of the pharmacy chain, Rite Aid. And I had the position as an intern till I heard from the board. I had no idea, and then I received the letter from the board, and then unfortunately it was the decision to terminate my employment just because the company didn't want to have any intern and probationary license. And since then, I'm just continuously looking for employment, and meanwhile trying to educate myself with doing CEs, and specifically in law and regulations. I gained a certificate in regulatory pharmacy specialist, and also I I continue my work in the Garfield Medical Center, and I'm because I wanted to gain as much as knowledge I could under supervision of Dr. Chan, and just do clinical work and be up to date. So I just continue reading the magazines, online sources, script, and in the middle of these things, I got pregnant and I had my baby. She's turning 1 tomorrow, so
Congratulations.
Thank you. I'm pretty much busy with that.
Could you tell us a little bit more about what you have learned from the incident that occurred 6 years ago? It was one incident where you authorized a prescription for yourself for a small amount of controlled substance. What did you learn from that?
Yeah, the minute I refilled it, I knew it's wrong. So I just backed it up. So the prescription never got filled, but I never forgave myself for that incident. I take full responsibility for that. That was not a professional act. And I just did my best to just educate myself as much as I can during the pharmacy school and after. So that incident never happened in my future. That's all I could do.
Have you shared your experience with other professional colleagues or other people, and have you enabled others to learn from what you have gone through and the reasons for that?
Yes, actually, after I took the ethic course, it was like a 2 days course, and we had like a 6 month and then 1 year follow up. Then they issued the certificate, and I was like very happy that I attended that ethic course, and I suggested that any pharmacy student, and not even pharmacy technician student, they need to have this course before they get licensed, so they know what's going on, what rules and regulations, and what are the consequences of the things that they might do unknowingly. And I talk to like so many of my colleagues and also my family members, and I tell them like any technicians that they see and I like get a chance to work with, I tell them about, just to know about the laws and rules, because back then I had no idea, because the pharmacy technician test was like something simple that I took, and then I was working as a clerk before, and I was like very interested. It was my first job in my life, and I was like very passionate about the pharmacy career. So I continue doing it, and got my license, and continued to be an intern pharmacist, and then a pharmacist, and then it was my passion just to be a pharmacist and help others. And then one incident that I made it like an unprofessional, like unwise decision. Just it was challenging. So.
At the time when you authorized that prescription, there was the prescription that was legally issued for you but lacked the refills. Have you been taking any controlled substances, or have you been prescribed any controlled substances since then?
No, just that one. I had it like a difficulty for a few months. I had like unfortunately I was in a very abusive relationship, and I had financial problem, and I lost like a family member at the same time, and I got accepted to the pharmacy school, and I lost all the saved money that I had for the pharmacy school. Somebody stole it, and then I had difficulty getting the loan. So it was like a lot of like a stress. So I went to this doctor, and she prescribed the medication for a short term, which I partially used, and that's it. After that, it never happened. I never took any like controlled medication. I didn't even take medication after my C-section. So I was even afraid. So I was like taking acetaminophen instead.
So at this point, if you were to examine your conduct in 2011, you do recognize how wrong it was.
Definitely, it was wrong, and I take a responsibility for it, and I'm like trying my best to prove myself again that I'm a good person, I'm a caring person, I care for others. I always put others before me, and now I started to just think about myself as well, and just respect myself and take care of myself while I'm taking care of the others as well. And that was a huge mistake, and I know it, and I admit it.
What kind of guarantee can you offer to the board, if any, that if you get into another stressful situation, you would not engage in a similar conduct?
First of all, I do my best to be me, to be caring person, to be dedicated person, and to do whatever I can to help people and myself. And if something like that, if the situation, we never know what's gonna happen in life, but a lot of ups and downs. But you know, if I get to that situation, the first thing that they do is like get a professional help, not just to put it, just on my shoulder and just like get to the point. But right now it's different. Back then, I was very lonely. I had nobody. But now I have a caring husband that, he's been with me during this process, and he's like covering all the costs and like supporting me 100%. I have my sister, I have my parents, and I have my daughter, which is the most precious thing in my life. And like just thinking about like having these things around me and being with them is like, it's a coping mechanism for me. So that's a lot different than before. I was like not in a good situation back then. It was like a period of time that like anybody can have, but I just didn't handle it the way I should have.
At this time, you're asking the board to reduce the length of your probation and to eliminate the two conditions that then effectively preclude your employment. How would you benefit, or how would the public benefit should the board decide to grant your petition?
I went to pharmacy school for 4 years, and I studied and I gained as much as knowledge I could. So I just want to get back to the society. Like I always wanted to get back to society and be like helping other people. That's why I started to work in a pharmacy instead of like other like fields. So I just want to get back to the community and just like, and that's kind of like, it's a therapy for me when I'm like working and the field that I really love. That's a therapy for me. So I just want to be around like the people. Like I don't want to isolate myself. And I'm just like gaining like a lot of clinical knowledge right now. I have this opportunity to, only 1 day per week, but I can be around patient. I can educate them. I can do the MTM and catch the medication errors. I can work with the colleagues that I have and gain their experience. So I just want to just continue doing this, and I want to just prove myself that I'm a dedicated person and I can do it because I'm confident and I know I can do it. I believe in myself. I always was a good pharmacy technician back then. Everybody like in the company that I was working, they knew that I'm a person that they can rely on. I was like handling the hard work, busy pharmacy, like long hours. I was handling everything, and now I just want to get back to what I was.
Do you believe that if the board would allow you to practice unsupervised, that your practice would pose threat to the public?
Threat to the public? No. Why? I love people. I never hurt anybody. And I always like comply to the law. I don't even have a parking ticket in my life. So, no.
No further questions, Your Honor.
All right, thank you. Any cross-exam?
Yes, thank you, Your Honor. Ms. Belhari, good afternoon. I don't want to belabor the point because we're mostly talking about things that have happened since then, but I want to make sure I understand the facts of what happened in 2011. You mentioned just a moment ago that you didn't use all of the medication that you received on the original prescription. You only partially took the drug.
Partially filled.
Okay, so you had a partial fill and you consumed all of that, and then you wanted to do another fill?
Just a refill, yeah.
Okay. And it was it was prior to the date on which you could have automatically gotten a refill. Is that correct?
It wasn't, no, it was one day past the date. Like prescription was, I believe it was expired because it's a controlled medication. It only had like 6 months. The day before we processed it. So the medication had one refill on it, but when we processed it, the refill was gone. So it needed the approval from the doctor. But it was a Saturday. So the doctor was not in the office.
Okay, and so would you say that your decision to forge that refill authorization was primarily motivated by your need for that medication?
No.
What would you say at that moment? What in your mind made you think that it was appropriate for you to authorize that refill request?
You know, the night before, I had a, huge fight with my ex-boyfriend, and he threatened to like kill my dog, and I had the dog for 7 years. I loved her. So, and I wasn't like, I was very like anxious, so I couldn't even concentrate. So, and in the morning when I woke up, I thought I'm like in a bubble, and I just don't want to talk to anybody. I'm just like so nervous. I've never been like that in my whole life. So, and then I said, okay, I have a medication because I didn't take it for like a few days. I just didn't feel need of it. And then that morning I said, okay, thank God I have a refill. I just get my prescription and I'm gonna relax tonight. Everything gonna be okay. I'm accepted in the pharmacy school. I'm gonna start the pharmacy school. I'm gonna go to Northern California. I'm not gonna see this person again. Everything is gonna be okay. But I had this in my mind. And then when I went there and asked my coworker, said, oh, oopsie, it's expired. We have to call the doctor on Monday. But I couldn't wait until Monday at that point.
So you said that you knew immediately that it was wrong, and you reversed the transaction?
I reversed the transaction. That's why the prescription never got filled and never got picked up. It was just me printing a paper and then reversing it. But one of the technicians saw it and then reported it immediately.
So I'm just trying to figure out, between when you did it and when you decided that it was wrong, did something change? Did you think it was appropriate when you first did it and then realize it, or did you know when you were doing it that it was inappropriate?
When you know something is wrong, you know it's wrong. Like maybe like I had a couple of minutes, like I had like that decision. Then I realized that maybe I can wait. Maybe I go to my friend tonight. I don't go home tonight. So I just realized that I can do something else. And I went back maybe like less than 5 minutes and I reversed it. And then, but when we processed, there's like 2 papers, the first one and then the second one. So the other technician took the first one and gave it to the pharmacist. And maybe because I didn't defend myself, I just said, I didn't say anything. And then on Monday morning, I received a call that they need to talk to me. And I knew that, they're going to report it.
And you chose to enter the transaction under your coworker's initials instead of your own, is that right?
Oh, the computer was initially signed in under that person. Mine was signed in front of the store, so we're supposed to sign off every time we leave the computer. And that's like what everybody tells us. But when the pharmacy gets busy, like honest with you, it's wrong, but we sometimes leave it like that. We go to help the customer, and when we come back, somebody else like type something with the initial, and this is never an issue. But that was against me because I couldn't prove that I didn't. It was already signed in. I just used the computer. That was what the initial was.
Okay. Now, you've referenced the desire to help financially contribute to your household as being one of your primary reasons for wanting to be able to work. Is that correct?
Actually, yes, because I have like about $340,000 student loan, which is like affected like last year, but I postponed it till like a few months ago. And my husband is the only one working in a family of like, I have like my parents, 2 disabled parents that were living with me, plus my sister and my baby. And my husband is the only one working. And he's working like 14, 15 hours a day. And he's very supportive, but he's tired because he's taking care of all. It's like $3,800 per month. It's a house, like a big house mortgage. We don't have a house. We rent one.
Mm-hmm.
So it's a lot of like expenses. And, he doesn't say anything, but I feel that, I have to contribute. I have to help him, just to come up with the expenses. He cannot do this forever.
And I completely understand, and I understand and support your desire to work as a pharmacist, but have you considered during the period of your probation seeking any other kind of employment to help contribute to the household?
Actually, yes, car business. Because my husband is in car business, he sell cars. So I tried, it's just not me. It's I want to be a pharmacist. I'm a pharmacist. I help him with the paperwork, but I don't get paid for it. So, it's just like me standing in a lot, like trying to help customers. I couldn't do it.
Your Honor, if I may briefly interject, the requirement of California State Board of Pharmacy for probationers is that they work as pharmacists, and that specifically discourages them to move on to other lines of business. Contrast that with many other states, whereas in, for example, Kentucky or Louisiana, a pharmacist may be on probation and he or she can decide to go into insurance sales or car sales for 5 years, let their probation run, and go back to pharmacy. In California, that is not the case. If a probationer does not work as a pharmacist for the minimum required amount of hours, he or she is in violation of the probation, and the license would in fact get revoked. So other lines of employment are strongly discouraged by the very terms of the probation.
Well, I don't need to get in an argument about that. She's required to work as a pharmacist for 40 hours a month. That obviously leaves other hours in the month that she might be able to do other things. Was my only point.
And that's how the question was understood.
I did have one factual question about the forgery of the refill. You wrote on the refill request authorization that had been authorized by someone named Bonnie. Is that correct?
Okay, that's what they said, but that wasn't me. The person, the technician that I asked him to call the doctor on Monday I said, there is a person there that working. Her name is Bonnie. Maybe sometimes when you call or fax the doctor's office, it takes forever to respond. Unless you know somebody, say, can I talk to this person? Or if you say, pay attention, like this person, they get back to you faster. That's what they put the name of that person and put the paper next to the computer to call or fax them. They already faxed it to call on Monday morning. That's what the Bonnie was.
Okay.
Yeah.
So if you were to be either granted a shortening of your term of probation or to have one or both of those terms eliminated, what kind of employment as a pharmacist would you like to pursue?
I would love to work in a hospital because during this past 2 years, I had like a great experience. Like I was working with like great, pharmacists, and I learned a lot, especially like in the infectious disease part. I'm working with a pharmacist that do the rotation with the doctor, and also Dr. Chan just give me like different project and that, and also like auditing the control medications, and it's a different different than retail. I love retail too because I'm good with people, so but my priority is hospital, but like retail is good too.
So you may have heard me ask a similar question to the prior petitioner. When you agreed to this stipulated settlement and agreed to a term of probation, the board recommended at that time, and you agreed to a 6-year probation with all of these terms. So that was what was deemed appropriate at that time by this board or a prior constitution of this board. What do you think has changed, or why do you think you should be treated differently now and given special treatment about either reducing the term of your probation or eliminating some of those terms that were previously deemed necessary?
Okay. Just to mention something about the decision. When I got the decision, because I've never been in this situation before, I never had any experience, so I didn't even know what to say or what to do. What is a formal procedure? Is that like a normal penalty or disciplinary action on the license? I had no idea. So I just like accepted whatever the previous attorney told me. So all I could do is just to be myself and prove myself. I said, that's years ago, and now I went to the pharmacy school. I worked so hard. I studied so hard. I went away from home. I'm from Los Angeles. For 4 years I was in Sacramento, like living there with my roommate. So I did my best to just learn and like have a good GPA and pass the board with a good score, and just when during my internship like be the best. Every internship that they had, they wanted to hire me, and I got hired by one of them. But after that, I had the problem like finding the job. So I just try to I just need a chance to redeem myself. That's all I can say. Just to prove that I'm a good, caring person, and I don't want one incident, one unprofessional, unwise decision, shadow me for the rest of my career, and just like I don't know. I just want to, redemption. I don't know.
When you have gone through these application and interview processes with these potential employers, have they specifically identified for you what would be the obstacles to employing you? And what I mean is one term is either the supervised practice term or your inability to supervise ancillary personnel more the problem than the other, or are they both equally problematic in terms of people hiring you?
All of them, but most of them they just go, just don't accept me because of the term probation. That
Mhm.
it's probation, and then after that they just sometimes they roll their eyes. I cried for the first or second time, and then I got used to it. I said I want to be strong. It's okay. I'm trying, and then they start like reading. So okay, it's very severe. Oh, now you cannot even supervise technician. How can you work and not supervise technician? So if you're supposed to be here and another pharmacist is supposed to be here to supervise you, and you cannot supervise a technician, what do you want to do then? Why do we even hire you? Why do we even pay you?
So let me ask you this. Have you had any specific conversations with any employer that would lead you to believe that if those two terms were eliminated, you would have greater success procuring employment, or would the fact that you're on probation still preclude them from hiring you?
As far as now, I have no, but I never tried like explaining to the employer that it's just probation. It's different when you're a pharmacist and you're practicing for a while, and then you get a probation on your license. You can still like practice. They know you're working for so many years, and just continue working. Just be on probation. But for a newly grad, actually I was an intern when I got my probation. As an intern, with the probation, then you get to the point that you want to go apply for a job. You're newly grad, you have no experience as a pharmacist, and then with all these terms, they just don't hire you. It's impossible. I tried, and I keep trying. I'm not gonna give up. I'm a strong girl.
I have nothing further at this point, Your Honor.
I'm not gonna.
Thank you. Any questions? Why don't we begin with member Wong? Didn't mean to catch you off guard there. You look very nice.
I'm sorry. Yes. So you never filled the prescription. I mean, you never actually obtained the medicine.
No.
So once you realize it, you reverse it,
Yes.
and you never get the medicine at all.
No.
So I have a question earlier, and I just about my mind. But let the next one go and see if I can come back to me then.
Sure.
And this could very well be the question you had in mind. So let me understand. So you had a prescription and it had a refill on it.
Yes.
But the refill, the time to refill it had expired by a day.
A day.
Whatever.
Yes.
And so you went in, and after discovering that the refill had expired by a day, you took the liberty to refill it somehow or other, and had a second thought about it and returned it.
Yes.
So your physician actually, in his mind, had authorized you to get a refill.
Actually,
I mean,
yes,
not
she's
at
like,
that moment, but
yeah,
when
yeah,
the physician
definitely,
wrote the
yeah,
prescription.
yeah.
Thank you. Was that the question?
That's
There you go.
So it does have one refill remaining, and it's fine.
Yes.
Could you tell us what is the typical day like working at Garfield Medical Center is? When you go there, what do you do?
Sure. Like it depends on the day of the month. Usually every second Friday of the month, when I go, I have a list that I need to make. It's like a lot of patients during that 2 weeks. I need to make a table, like a private table, and then check each of them how many pain medication they're taking, if the doctor is like, if they have like a duplicate in like pain therapy in the same group, and also check the nurses to see if, like, for example, if they're like dispensing two medication, is it written for two medication,
So you mean
two
you're doing
tablets
the
for
medication
one?
reconciliation?
Exactly. I do that like every 2 weeks, which takes like 4 or 5 hours, and then I go for the hypoglycemic episode. So we have a list every 2 weeks that I need to monitor the patients with the hypoglycemia, find out why that episode happened, and write a report.
Do you
And
go to the second floor pharmacy?
yes.
Okay.
And then the second thing, that if we have time for that day, then I go through like some of the the admission patient. Usually every other day, the pharmacist is the name pops up, and I need to go check that patient to see if the file, the home med and the hospital med, they are reviewed.
So
And
they give
then
you a computer.
yes, and then I go to the floor. Sometimes when the patient is like discharging, I go there and just like talk to them. Like they have a folder next to them, so I go and just tell them, if they have like any access to, get the medication. For now, we cannot do anything about it. I'm just like talking to them to just show them like if they have like other ways to obtain the medication. So if they have like medication in the hospital and then they have medication that is duplicate in the home, or the names are different or the dosage are different, I mark it for them. I try to explain it. They're mostly speaking Chinese, but they have a phone.
That's what I was
Yes,
trying to get at.
exactly.
It's predominantly
Yeah.
Asian Chinese
Yeah.
patients hospital.
I know. I usually, my technician speaks very, very well Chinese. So we go and we talk to them, and I just mark it for them, and I talk to the family member. Most of the time, one of the family member can speak English, at least at the point that we understand each other. And then sometimes for the CHF, we go and we give them the brochure in Chinese and also in English, and try to just tell them about the diet. It depends. Like every week of the every day of the week, we have like different project. But these
So
are
this
the ones
is-
that we
it's
do
a
every
special
2
project
weeks.
by Dr. Evan Chen.
Mhm.
And so if you don't go, do they have another pharmacist doing some similar things that you do?
Actually, sometimes they do something, and sometimes the other admin pharmacists go, but they do not have like enough help, because everything is under Dr. Chan's shoulder, and he's a very busy man. How he needs to take care of everything. But me helping him is it's good. It's good for him and it's good for me. We both enjoy it. So I don't think he has like a specific pharmacist doing that. So
So it's something that he kind of created for you to do to help out the hospital.
he was doing it. Yeah, he was doing it himself, but he couldn't do it like every 2 weeks. We're supposed to do the report, so he can like every PNT committee he can have like a package to present. Sometimes he couldn't do it, so he was skipping that part, or he only had one. Like for the first time when I started doing hypoglycemia episode, I had 3 months of worth of patients, which we need to do like every 2 weeks, and it was like a lot. So it's like it was really time consuming. And then like in the other part, when we have like I do the inventory check in the hospital. I do like expiration. Sometimes I help with the IV room, because I did that during my internship. I learned how to do it. So different types of stuff. Sometimes they need to update the forms and the antibiotics. So me and Diane, the other pharmacist, we go, and I did like a lot of presentation for the nurses, because I'm good with the presenting and making the slides. So we do on the IVs, the administering IVs and different subjects like hypoglycemia. We do project, and I present to the nurses.
And how long would it take you to drive from your home to Monterey Park?
Round trip, almost 4 hours.
Yeah, that's. And how long have you been doing this?
2 years.
I really have to think you did a good job in keeping it up for that 2 years.
Yeah,
Just
but
for
I
your-
love the hospital. It's like my second home.
Just for your record, I was the chairman of the board of the hospital for 4 years.
Really?
Do we need her 4 years?
Yes, Can I get back my turn? Yeah, actually, Josh asked my question earlier. That's why I slipped out of my mind. Josh asked you earlier whether you had job lined up or anything like that. So same thinking that now Victor asked you that question. So you've been volunteering at this hospital, right? As I understand,
Yes.
right? And now, if you off probation or if you have no restriction, will they be hiring you?
If they have opening, Dr. Chan said, I will hire you if you have opening. But he said they need to show at least like $150,000 to $200,000 like improve or income in order to have a pharmacist to cover that shit. And I asked him, I'm like at the beginning when I started, I was pregnant and I was a high risk. I had a high risk pregnancy, so I couldn't do any graveyard shift. But I told him, even if you have graveyard shift, I'm more than happy to help you. Just like let me know. Or I think it's like 5 hospitals that they're like connected. Said like in any of them, I prefer that hospital because it's my home. But any of them. 7? Okay, now it's 7. Okay, good.
Yeah. Okay. Thank you. That
Sure.
basically that was my questions. Whether you have a job lined up, whether Well, it's good to hear that you travel 4 hours to volunteer a job. That's good.
There's one more thing. There is another company. I'm not sure if you're familiar with it. It's ABS Health, and they do clinical trial. They work on like clinical, and they need a pharmacist part time. It's not like a full-time job or part-time. Sometimes they need a pharmacy for 2 hours, sometimes 8 hours. It depends how many patients they have. But right now, because of the probationary part of my license, they have nobody to supervise me. They said I interviewed and twice, and they like me, but they're waiting to see like what happens.
I know. The stigma of probation, I think, is very strong because. Even I'm in the board, I feel the same way. Because my partner the other day told me that we are applicant that was on probation. Instantly, I just say no. I saw the word probation. I think is very very strong. No more question.
Okay, I guess it's to me. So first off, congratulations on your child.
Oh, thank you.
That's like a whole nother career.
Yeah.
So I just, to kind of go off of what Albert and Victor were talking about, so 40 hours a month is what you're working at the hospital.
Yes.
And it sounds like you go every other week? Is that
No,
what you-
I go sometimes every Friday, sometimes every Wednesday. It depends when the reports are like ready and Dr. Chan needs me.
Okay, and so when you're there, is it like a 10-hour shift?
I do 10-hour shifts, yes.
Okay. And so what you're doing sounds like unique tasks. Have you ever followed what a pharmacist who actually works at Garfield Medical Center?
Yes. When they do dispensing and they answer the doctor phone calls, I'm like standing there and we work together. Sometimes, I like a technician, I work with them while we're talking and they're telling me, oh, you need to do this, you need to upload this paper. When the doctor calls, you go to this website and you check this. Yeah, I'm literally there, we're doing it together. It's just not like me by myself. I even when it's like, oh, grab me that medication, and I do everything. I do put the label and I leave it with they check it and I leave it for the nurses to come and pick it up. It's just I can do it without. I do the crash part. I do check everything, and they trust me. They say, oh, okay, you do it right. So, and I deliver all the charting by myself. So yeah, I can do it by myself. I just
And the clinical trial program, is that at Garfield Medical Center?
No, it's a different. It's called ABS Health. Yeah, it's a new company. It's near Pasadena. So
Okay.
yeah.
And so then, when I go back to the decision back in 2015, so I see you had the original prescription was written. Yes, the original prescription was written.
January 31st.
Thank you. January 31st. And you got a refill on May 5th, and then you were trying to get a refill on August 13th.
Yeah, I think I had 2 more refill on the prescription when the prescription was expired. Yeah.
So you're trying to pick up the second refill.
Yes, but I didn't pick up the second refill until it was expired.
Right. It looks like it was actually expired by about 2 weeks.
2 weeks or 1 day. I think when they processed it, it was okay on the Friday, but not the Saturday. That's what they told
I'm
me.
just going
Yeah.
by what was in the
Okay.
record. In the record, it said it was
Okay.
January 1st, and you were trying to do it.
Okay.
So it should have been expired July 31st.
Yeah.
So then it says in the record that on Monday, they called the doctor's office, and the office manager said that she hadn't approved it. And the same day, she called back and said that you had gone in and asked her to say that you had approved, that she had approved it?
No. I went to the doctor to tell her what happened. I said, I did this, she always refilled it. I've never had any problem with her. Even not for me, for other patients. She was very good. She was signing off the paperwork very quickly, very responsive. But I told her, this is what happened, and I know I made a mistake. I don't know what happened, but for some reason I don't know why they charted it, and because I didn't follow up for 2 years. I didn't even know when I left. The incident happened on August 13th, and my school started on August 20th. So within this week, I was I started pharmacy school, and I received the letter 2 years on the when I was on the second year, almost third year, in December. September 2013. So by this time, I didn't know. So I didn't go back to see what happened. What did they say? What did they write? I didn't even know. So until I received the letter, 2 years after.
Okay.
So
it's just it's in the record that that's kind of what happened. And then while you were there, it sounds like the doctor called back with you standing there.
yeah, she even write me the note that said it's okay. Today you can take a day off. You're nervous, and she wrote me the piece of paper to give it to my work. That's what she did, and that's what I did.
Okay, because actually once again the record makes it sound like it says you abandoned your shift and failed to come to work and was eventually terminated.
No,
That's the one allegation that
yeah.
was not admitted in the stipulation.
Yeah.
So that's.
Okay, thank you.
I gave them the 2 weeks notice before because I was doing my immunization for pharmacy school, and my school was starting the following week. I wanted to go and just get the room and get prepared before the school starts. So I was leaving. They had my notice,
Okay.
Yeah.
So this truly was happening 2 weeks before you were leaving to go start pharmacy school.
Yeah, exactly. I was very stressed. It was my school was starting and my loan was pending, and I had a little bit of money that I saved up, but my ex-boyfriend stole it, plus my dog. Just it was very bad. So I had to run to my friend's house, and they locked me. They locked me for 2 days, so no, I couldn't even leave the house, and they know about it. The manager know about it. So that was the whole situation that they had because he didn't wanted me to leave. That's why when I received the letter from pharmacy school, he hid it and he didn't give it to me until Miss Kubak called me from the pharmacy. Said, what do you want to do? If you don't want to come, we can call somebody else to replace you. And I said, no, I'm coming. And I just left with one suitcase, nothing else. So I was in a very bad situation. I've never been in that situation in my life, and unfortunately, I handled it very bad. Thank you.
You're working at Garfield 10 days a week. Sounds like you're doing some clinical work in the hospital that's very specified. What are you doing to keep up your skills other than that?
I do a lot of CEs, and also I read. And when sometimes because sometimes I have to go there by Uber, and sometimes my husband drop me off early in the morning, and then I come back at home. I have some extra hours there. Sometimes I just go and just stand next to the pharmacist, and we just talk about the new medications, how they dispense it, how the formulary works. Sometimes I do the order for them, and I do just keep up with the reading. When I was in maternity for a few weeks, I was laying down and just doing C's and just reading the stuff. So that's all I can do.
What are typical references that you keep up with? Are there any journals or any specific things that you do to keep your skills?
I'm a member of the APHA and CPHA, so I'm on the website most of the time, and also I read the script. Not always, but sometimes because of the law part, I really wanted to just be up to date on that. And sometimes I go back and just get my pharmacy law book that I have, the blue book, and just read off of it. It's really interesting now. If I knew that when I was there, there's no way I'd just do that. Yeah.
Sure.
Sound like you guys asked all the questions already. But I do see that you did do 85 hours in 1 year
Yes.
of continuing education. So I think that's, I commend you for doing that and what you're doing as far as volunteering 40 hours a month and driving 4 hours to do that. And so, I certainly, and then the fact that you said you were in an abusive relationship at the time, and that's one of the reasons why you were on the Xanax in the first place, right?
Yes, for only a few months, I took it because I was like at the point that, I was like really stressed out with the, abusive relationship, with the financial problem that I had, because I was only working part-time and I was attending, because I graduated from California Dominguez Hills, and like 2 months before I got my master's degree. And within 2 months, I got accepted to pharmacy school, and the whole transition, it was like overwhelming with the, cost, expenses, and like graduation, the whole thing. Yeah, that's why.
And so you were able to get away from that relationship.
Yeah, because I could apply. I had the units to apply for USC. I had like more prerequisites than I supposed to, but I wanted to go somewhere like far so he cannot follow me. I knew he cannot do that like all the time. He did it for a few months and then he.
I'm happy you were able to get away from him.
Yeah, I'm happy about that.
And for what you've done with all the CE and the hours that you've put in, I commend you for that.
I do anything to prove myself. Like whatever the board requires, or just tell me, I'm willing to do it, no matter how hard it is. Like when I was in the second year and I got the letter, almost everybody told me, just quit. It's not worth it. It's not worth the headache. Just don't go through it. But I said no. That's my passion, and I will fight it. I prove myself, and I will do that. I'm a strong person. That's all I did.
I'm glad you did that.
Thank you.
Thank you.
Yeah, I look for patterns. I don't see anything. I think it was one incident. I think you made a bad choice, but I think 2 years is 2 years. That's it. I'm very, very appreciative of everything you've done to better yourself. I think you have a great future in the pharmaceutical industry. I would encourage you to continue that.
I will do that. Thank you.
I'm not swayed because I've never made a bad choice. No. Exactly.
That was
I'm
it,
glad
huh?
you realized that.
What was that story you were telling me about running over yourself with a tractor?
I do have a couple questions though. One was you were on Xanax for a short amount of time, and she pumped it up to 2 milligrams. That's a heck of a dose.
Yeah, that's what. Yeah, because I know it now as a pharmacist that you start 2.25, you go up. But she started maybe 2 milligrams with 2 refills. That's
terrible.
how
That's terrible.
she was writing the prescription. Yeah.
She really liked you or didn't like you, I'm not sure which. And then you said, in the beginning of your statements, you said you wish that everybody had taken an ethics course that seemed to open your eyes. Is there anything in particular that you'd like to educate the board on, that the reason that we should perhaps emphasize that?
Exactly. Like in the first day of the ethic court, there are like a few attorneys, like different people. They come and like they sit and they talk about the pharmacy laws and like the way that they discipline the licenses if something happens, and they go into details. Even the students in the pharmacy school, we study law for 1 semester, but they go through like the book and just that's it. They don't tell you what is the consequence. They say this is wrong, this is wrong, this is wrong, but what is the consequences? You're gonna pay for it maybe for years or like maybe forever. So they don't know. Like most of my colleagues in pharmacy school, I'm like 200% in a pharmacy. When I'm like checking a medication, I check it like 200 times maybe. Because like now I know how important it is, how the consequences are severe. So they don't know that. Most of the people, they just like, they do some errors that they don't even know they're errors. Not that they do it on purpose, they don't know it. So if they have something like that in the pharmacy school, it can be very beneficial.
Yeah, I'd like to add on that. I think maybe in the future we should consider make it at the ethic classes part of the law classes, make it mandatory for every pharmacy school. I think will be helpful. So they will know the problem before they getting into.
Two of my colleagues, they're enrolling to one ethical voluntarily to just see what's going on and just learn from it.
Anything further from the board?
I have one follow-up question, Your Honor.
Thank you.
I just was looking at your record of CE and noticing that on May 24th, 2016, you took a total of 24.
I printed them that day.
So that's just the day you printed them. That's not the day you took them.
No, it was different date, but I printed them at the same time.
Okay, thank you.
Anything further?
I just I hope that the board members, they see me the way that I am, and they don't see my mistake. They see how caring I am about and passionate I am about the career, and I appreciate the time, and I really I do anything whatever they say,
Thank
to
you.
just prove myself. Thank you.
Thank you. Any additional witnesses?
No, Your Honor, but with your permission, I'd like to make a brief closing statement.
Go ahead, please.
Well, first of all, I'd like to again thank the board for their patience and for their listening. We certainly appreciate the opportunity to present our petition. I would like to, in closing, address Mr. Room's question that he posed earlier, and that is, what had changed since the time of the conduct in question to today, and what has changed since the time when Dr. Bolohari agreed to the penalty that was 6 years probation, supervised practice, and no supervision of ancillary personnel. And during the time when the stipulation was entered into, the board did not really know Ms. Bolohari. She was still in School of Pharmacy. She was a new entity, and given the nature of the conduct, albeit it was only a single isolated incident, the penalty that was assessed against her may have appeared reasonable and prudent because the board needed a certain level of supervision and some guarantees that such conduct would not occur in the future. What has changed since then is that Dr. Bolohari completed her doctorate in pharmacy. She had put forth very substantial effort to maintain her clinical skills. As Mr. Room addressed that earlier, the requirement for a pharmacist to renew their license is 30 hours every 2 years. For new graduates, actually, there is no requirement of any continuing education for the first renewal period. Dr. Bolohari completed more than twice the amount, almost 3 times the amount in the recent past to maintain her clinical skills. So, in conclusion, that is what has changed. The person who sits before you today is not the same person who made that poor choice 6 years ago. Today, we're dealing with someone who has put forth a very substantial effort to gain the trust of the board. And we certainly hope that she had proven to you that she is worth of your trust and that she is worthy of the trust of the public to allow her to continue to practice the profession that he's chosen, and that she's so dedicated to, as can be seen from her volunteer work. And with that, we'd like to also ask the board to consider the purpose of probation. The purpose of probation, as many cases have established, is not to punish the practitioner who may have made a poor choice, especially if it's only one single incident. The very purpose of probation is to allow that practitioner to redeem himself or herself and to demonstrate her commitment to public safety and to the practice of pharmacy. By imposing conditions of a practice of a probation that make it essentially impossible for her to do so, what we're facing is a situation that appears to be contrary to the very purpose of the probation. If we do not allow this practitioner to maintain her clinical skills and to demonstrate to the board her commitment, the purpose of the probation does not appear to be satisfied. And with that, I thank you.
Thank you very much. Mr. Room, did you have any closing comments?
I don't, Your Honor. Thank you.
All right. Thank you. Then at this time, this petition hearing is concluded. The record is closed in this matter and submitted to the board for decision. We're off the record in this matter, and we will call the next petition Monahan. Thank you.
Manayan. Marie. You want a 5-minute break for the restroom? Yeah, can we do a 5-minute?
5-minute break.
Restroom?
Off the record.
Okay, wanna go to the restroom?